Over the course of a single Mythic Plus season, I set the totally reasonable goal of obtaining the rank 1 title on not one, not two, but three separate paladins: Retribution, Protection, and Holy. This is Title Trinity, the full 6-month journey condensed into a single video. I learnt a lot over this period, not just about competitive Mythic Plus, but also how to tell a story better. In a way, this documents both my World of Warcraft grind as well as my evolution as a creator. So here it is, the entire journey in a single bingeable video. Let's get into it.
I received a comment on a recent video saying that Ret Pelly is the worst melee class and hated with a passion and should be banished to the bottom of the character list. Rather than debate this individual, I thought of something even better. What if I push M plus on not just one paladin, but 3 different paladins? So, welcome to Title Trinity, where I'm going to be spending an ungodly amount of time and a large portion of my sanity trying to achieve the Mythic Plus title on 3 different paladins. One playing Retribution, one playing Protection, and one playing Holy. Is this crazy? A little? Is it achievable? Probably not, but I'm going to give it a really good go nonetheless. Before we kick things off though, let's just establish some ground rules and context for the series. For those that are unaware, the Mythic Plus title is awarded at the completion of each season to the top 0.1% of the player base based on their dungeon score. So in NA, which is where I play, this equated to a Season 2 score last season of 3805 and was awarded to 1,096 players. Last season, I obtained this on my Ret Paladin with a score of 3818. So this season, I have to repeat this feat 3 times over, one for each of the Paladin roles. To maintain some integrity with the series, I'm just going to establish some ground rules, like right now before we start. First, score can only be obtained on one character per role. So Protection score can only be gotten on the Paladin designated to tank. Same thing for Holy, same thing for Ret. This stops me grinding up a Resilient key and then simply respecking to get score in the other roles. Second, no carries. Pretty self-explanatory. If I pay for carries, it sort of defeats the purpose of the challenge. And third, I cannot complete a Resilient key if it is more than 1 level higher than the current level key that I've done. What this is to stop is me having a friend towards the end of the season who has a Resilient key in title range, and then me taking one of the classes that I haven't played as much and doing a key level that's 5 levels higher than ones that I've currently done. It has to be things that I've actually worked on, and Resilient keys can only be used to go up 1 level at a time. That's about it. Beyond that, I just have to grind hard and play a hell of a lot on 3 different paladins. As I mentioned before, I obtained title as Retribution Paladin last season. I've also played this spec for many years, so I don't foresee any issues diving into things on this character, aside from the fact that Ret is currently really struggling DPS-wise. Now for Protection Paladin, I made this character late into Season 2, mainly because I'm weird and hate respecking. Practiced the role a little bit in between pushing last season, and have begun playing this toon primarily at the start of this season. However, beyond that, my tanking experience is very limited. This character will be the main focal point of at least the first half of the season, and I'm expecting the learning curve to be pretty steep, as I've never really tanked at a high level before. Mobs have already clapped me multiple times, even in just 1 week. And last up is Holy. Now, I've never really played Holy before. I have no idea how it works. I don't even have the character yet. But I guess there's no better time than the present. So let's get a character whipped up, pay a strange man a lot of gold, and sit in the Siren Isles for a few hours while someone else levels up for us. So, after a few hours of very engaging gameplay, we have a third Paladin at 80 ready to heal. Now, let's review the team. First up, we've got Boggy, the Draenei Retribution Paladin and my longtime main. Next, we've got Boggy with a funny O, the Blood Elf Protection Paladin who's hot off the blocks for Season 3 and already pushing keys. And lastly, the newest addition, Boggy with another funny O, the freshly leveled Dark Iron Dwarf Holy Paladin, who is now primed and ready to go. So, as I mentioned before, I've never played Holy before. I have absolutely no idea how it works, so I figured what better way to learn than throw myself straight into keys. After searching for YouTube guides, I realized that there really wasn't much available outside of Ellismere talking about the new build, which went well over my head since he's clearly much more experienced than me. Something about infusions, I don't know. I followed up with a quick read of the Icy Veins and Wowhead guides, of which I absorbed absolutely nothing. So a good start, but I then did a quick fly around to the rep vendors, crafted a bunch of 675 gear, and at a healthy 660 item level, jumped straight into the Mythic Plus system. So this week, we mainly just got our toes wet. I timed 5 keys around the 2 to 4 level. I think I've started to get a bit of an idea of how the spec plays. Took me a few dungeons to work out that Holy Shock can actually be cast on enemies. I was sitting there thinking I was running out of buttons and didn't know what to do. But I'm now starting to get a feel of the general cadence of the spec. I must say, Holy Paladin feels really good in the Beacon of Virtue windows, especially if you've got Divine Toll or Wings running, but the times in between that feel a little bit rough. I'm sure I'll get the hang of it at some stage, but for now, we're just in the learning phases. So next up, the Ret. Bit of a light week for my main bay. I've managed to knock over a few keys, couple of 10s to give us at least a single piece of Myth Track loot in the vault. Nothing crazy. Season start means that a lot of time is getting poured into like my main push tune, which is the Protection Paladin this season. Plus with the upcoming 5% aura buff, which at the time of this video is probably already in effect, I'm sort of waiting for the numbers to improve for Ret before I start really doing too much on it. Still rocking a lot of 584 gear from the previous season. We're sitting at 589 item level, which is fine for the moment. I've got a replay on the screen of one of the keys that was done last week, but nothing too much here. Just sort of playing it in the background, trying to maintain some vaults and just keep my fingers warm with the spec. And lastly, we've got the Protection Paladin, where a lot of my time and energy has actually been poured for this last week. I have not got all of the recordings for all of the timed runs, but in future, we'll have a lot more gameplay footage to go over in the background as we go through these videos. To round out this week, I've managed to time 4 plus 13s, including a floodgate, which was very cool as well, 2 12s and 2 11s. After our normal raid clear earlier in the week, I'm sitting on 4-piece, 704 item level, and I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable behind the wheel as a tank. This hasn't been without its difficulties though. Prop Paladin very much seems to be one of those tanks that feels really safe and then all of a sudden you just get dumpstered by something. I must say the OC boys that I play with have been very understanding with me though, and despite my screw ups, I've learnt a lot in a single week. So come next week, I think we'll get the resilient keys ticked off pretty quickly and then the score should just fly upwards from there. Now, one highlight at the end of the week was a successful Deathless Hard Mode Tazavesh run. I'm going to pop some replays up on the screen of some highlights of the run. Really cool to get it knocked out week 1 successfully, so enjoy the replays.
Yeah, I've got
Oh,
the
you got the blue thing, so you can stay in.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not gonna stay. I don't. I can eat orbs.
Don't get sucked in.
Get it. Do not get sucked in.
Oh no. Ah. I'm good.
Oh no, sorry, Dank. I put it on you by accident.
I just
Oh,
burst.
nice. Very good shit, brother.
Beat.
Oh, it's orbs.
I just popped everything on this guy just to kill him.
Oh, I need a lot of heals. I'm stuck.
Okay. Now it's just a normal fight.
Dead.
Move through if you need. Move through if you can. Just survive. Don't worry about DPS.
Help.
I'm just going to get these two.
Don't worry about them. Let's just kill the boss.
Hey, I've fog, you got many stacks.
No, we're fine.
Pop everybody here, boys. Don't get the purple out of nowhere.
Easy game.
Pog champ. That was kind of sketch.
Well done. Well done. Let's kill it. GG, good shit, boys.
Let's go.
Well done, everybody. Good shit.
Trent, you're such a prolific hate watcher.
He's everywhere. He could sense it.
That is huge. Oh, congrats, lad.
So a really good finish to the week. I've popped the current scores of all of the Paladins on screen, as well as what the current title cutoff is, so we can keep up with the progress of each of the characters episode to episode. It's been very much an establishing week, so none of the characters are in the current title range, but hopefully over the next few weeks we can start to get some real momentum into the push and get each character into a solid position moving forward, as well as learn the characters that I don't know all that well. As I'm only raiding once a week, this means that I can put a lot more time into pushing keys, which I expect I'm going to need if I'm even going to have the smallest chance of achieving this goal. If you want to keep up with the series, drop a like and a sub and let me know in the comments whether you think I'm nuts or not for even attempting this. I also stream a good portion of the runs over on Twitch. I'll pop the links somewhere here. Drop by and say hi if you want to see the push live in action. Otherwise, that's about it. Until next time, gamers, take care. Welcome back to Title Trinity, the challenge where I try to push 3 different Paladins, each of a different role, to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title. Quick rules recap. There is 1 character per role, no carries, and no resilient key farming. Here's where we left off before. We had Prot Paladin way on top, with Holy and Ret dragging a long way behind. This episode, we're going to aim to close that gap. So starting out with Protection Paladin, there were a few glaring issues I've encountered with this spec. However, there is one real standout. I keep dying.
Well, none of these
Oh, dude, what am I doing? Oh my lord, hello? I am in a lot of trouble here. Alongside this, I'm often losing threat right as a pull starts, and when pulls get way too hectic, I just don't have the cognitive capacity to call kicks and stops yet, leading to situations like this one here. So after the mountain of deaths, I definitely needed to sit down and plan my defensive usage much more effectively. I had a bad habit of just randomly pressing buttons in large pools out of panic rather than planning them around mob abilities. So I did a deep dive on what was actually hurting in each dungeon so that I could be better prepared for these things, which then did lead to some amount of success. I don't have to bubble if I can avoid it. Now I can bubble. However, much to the dismay of my DPS friends, I have had problems with losing threat on pull. I think this is easily avoidable though. Looking back at footage, I seem to be relying too heavily on just passive threat gen from Shield of the Righteous rather than things like Divine Toll or Avenger's Shield, so I've started throwing out those early on just to establish some threat. So hopefully that does make a fairly positive impact. However, in saying that, DPS players, you do just need to chill. Taking a step back as well, my UI is not very well set up. Going forward, I need to be positioning things in more easily visible locations, make it a bit more obvious who's got AoE stops ready, and maybe shift some things into audio cues. That should reduce the cognitive overload problem that I've been having lately. But alongside that, I think just getting more proficient at the class will also help in this area as well. And this leaves us with a score of 3157 for Prot Pel. Not a huge jump, but slow, steady progress. And a lot of this is also due to the fact that I've put mountains of time into the other 2 Paladins to sort of bring them up to scratch. On that note, let's check out Holy next. I had one glaring issue with Holy Paladin. I sucked. I had no gear, no experience, and as a result, I got caught with my pants down on so many occasions. This plus 12 Dawnbreaker in the background is a perfect example. In this pull, people died because I couldn't heal them up. On the boat, people died because I couldn't heal them. And then the key was over before the first boss was even dead. So this is quite embarrassing, especially to happen live. Very much, though, not what you would want to see from a push this spec to title sort of perspective. So I did the only thing that made sense to me. I practiced a lot. Outside of that, I sat and watched Ellismere's stream like an insane person, trying to figure out exactly how he was timing his cooldowns and using his abilities. The thing I noticed with Holy Paladin is it feels really good with Beacon of Virtue rolling, or with Wings or Toll, But outside of that, you're left pretty dry on healing. So a lot of being good at Holy Paladin seems to be juggling the cooldown of Beacon of Virtue. I also started using this new dungeon pack with verbal announcers for different abilities that mobs are doing. It's actually kind of funny. It took me a bit to get used to because it has this very monotone, like damage, tank, defensive sort of way of saying things. I'll let you guys have a listen, but I've actually found it really helpful to use.
Kick.
Counter.
Damage.
So putting this new knowledge and the weak aura in place, I basically just did a mountain of dungeons. I am still short 4 set, but I've got myself up to 706 item level on the Holy Paladin. Alongside this, I've started to get a better understanding of cooldown usage as well. So I think Swamp Face is a really good example, the third boss in Floodgate. I've sort of learnt that a good way to go about things is to cast Beacon of Virtue prior to the AoE starting by a few seconds, getting everyone up to full, letting them drop down a little bit, and then getting another Beacon of Virtue rolling around to then bring them back up. Now that I'm actually understanding how the class works, I must admit, Holy's really good, and I'm honestly having probably the most fun playing it compared to all the other specs. Now, as a bit of a juxtaposition to the Dawnbreaker from earlier, here is a clip of all of that sort of coming together. Now, while we all wiped here, and I definitely didn't use kicks or externals very well, I managed to keep everyone alive for like almost a minute. And hell, I got to a peak of 4.5 mil HPS with an overall of like 3.7 mil HPS after that pull. Honestly, I'd say that's a massive sign of growth compared to the first clip that we showed. Now, obviously, not all deaths in the Holy Belly keys were my fault either. I'll show a clip that illustrates this perfectly. Just note, I wasn't streaming here and I've blacked out the names because I was being a little bit toxic. Dude, stop! What is wrong with these people? Oh my god, they're so special. They're so special in the head. It actually hurts me. Now, obviously, if things like this are out of my control, I'm not too bothered by them, especially since a lot of the runs have just been like no comms pugs. But after all of the effort we've put in, we've dragged the Holy Paladin up to 2.8k IO, which is a massive jump compared to the first episode. And I also feel like my skill on the class has improved out of sight. And lastly, onto the Ret Paladin. Now, I really had no dramas here. For those that are unaware, I am a long-term Ret Paladin main. I got the 0.1% title last season on this character. So a lot of this is very much just like muscle memory kicking in. I got into a string of solid groups over the course of a few days and pretty much managed to just cruise my way up the ranks without too much issue. Along the way, I got a Hero Track Sephorium Pacemaker and Arakaris Sackbrood, which has allowed me to replace majority of last season's gear with some solid upgrades. The 5% DPS increase, thanks to the hysteria in the Paladin Discord, has actually been really nice too. It's felt like very solid damage output and has allowed me to carry a few keys. All up, there weren't really that many moments that were montage worthy. The run in the background is probably a notable one. It's the final one that we did on the character for this episode and got us over the mark to 3k IO. Not a very flashy storyline, but sometimes it just worked is a good story as well. I'm not complaining either. So now that we've got them all out of the way, let's pull up the scoreboard and see where we're standing now on all three Paladins versus where we were standing in the previous episode. So, scoreboard for this episode. We've got Protpel at 3157. We've got Retpel just over 3k. and Holy Pell just over 2.8k. No characters inside of the current title cutoff, but this episode has very much just been like ironing out kinks and gearing characters that were lagging behind. So not a lot of glory keys, so to speak. Prot needed better stability and threat gen. Holy, I just needed to straight up learn and gear. And Ret, I pretty much just needed to log on and play, I suppose. So with these fundamentals now set, next episode we're going to start aiming for keys that are closer to the title cutoff range, as well as keep building on the things that we've learned throughout the last couple of weeks. Pulling it all together, though, I have noticed that playing all three roles this season has actually warped my dungeon brain, so to speak, in a good way. Tanking has taught me which tank busters hurt, so when I play Holy, I know when I really need to be paying attention to the tank. Healing has taught me which parts of a dungeon are really hurting the party, so I know when I'm playing DPS when I need to defensive. When I'm playing melee DPS as Ret, I am very aware of mob positioning. So as tank, I try my best to tank things in a way that melee DPS can hit. I don't always get this right, though. Apologies to my melee DPS friends. So putting it all together, I think playing every role has actually given me a really good sort of general knowledge about the dungeons this season and has probably improved me as a player a lot quicker than just playing a single spec. Bit of a side note, for those that are blind, I guess, I'm a bit of a Pokemon fan. Now, I open Pokemon packs on stream, so for those that are interested, here is a really cool highlight that happened just the other night.
All right.
Peek.
Get him.
Oh, there's something.
What's
Oh my god, no way! No!
2, 3.
Oh, let's go!
Is this worth if I max it? It is worth. Okay,
Yes!
Okay. By 0.1 4k.
Oh, dude.
It's almost not worth the crest of that.
So that was pretty cool. Card's worth like 300 Australian dollars or 200 freedom dollars, I guess. Back to the series though. Moving forward, aside from gearing and some UI adjustments, it is now time for us to be grinding into the title range keys, which is going to be a lot of fun now that we've got all of the characters well established. Drop a like and a sub to keep up with the Title Trinity series. I am also starting a regular Q&A soon where I answer community questions or reach out to knowledgeable players if I don't have the answers myself. If you have a question you want to ask, drop it down below with the hashtag #BogsHotline. Also, as I mentioned, runs are streamed live on Twitch. If you want to come over, hang out, watch me run keys, make me open Pokemon packs, I'll pop the channel name in the video here. Otherwise, that's all from me. So until next time, gamers, take care.
Welcome back to Title Trinity, the challenge series where I attempt the absurd task of pushing 3 separate Paladins, each on a different role, to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title in Season 3 of War Within. For this series, I'm only allowed to get score for a single role on a particular character. I am not allowed to pay for carries for obvious reasons, and I'm not allowed to farm resilient keys that are any more than 1 level above what I've already completed on that character. On screen are the scores for the characters, starting from the end of the last episode. Each of these characters has had their own trials and tribulations, but there has been one thing that has popped up, has been consistent across all of them: time. It turns out that pushing 3 separate characters is quite a time investment, so not only am I battling my own incompetence on these specs, I'm also battling the clock. However, I guess whining about the amount of time that I need to put into a completely self-imposed challenge is not really going to help the cause, so without further ado, let's kick into the prop Paladin first. Now, in a surprise to nobody, a tank dying in a key is generally rest in peace the key. Similar to last episode, I am still struggling with deaths on prop Paladin. Like, let's just have a look at this plus 16 Arakara here. Now, we have about 9 minutes left, which I think is plenty of time for this effectively one more pull and then the boss. You can see me getting awfully confused trying to pull this extra pack in, procking kings because I face my back to the mobs, losing threat to the Ellie Shaman. My Havoc here also just died previously because I couldn't get threat as I entered the pool. This is just something that confused the hell out of me. But if we look at my bars, I have Ardent up. I have Blessing of Ancient Kings there ready to press. I could press Eye of TR. Lots of defensive buttons there. You know, I Word of Glory instead of pressing any of those for some reason. And then my health just goes to 0. this is not good. This is completely avoidable. And I had so many things I could have pressed and I just didn't. But it's not all bad. Like, I am building a little bit of competence with this spec. If we have a look at this clip of this plus 16 streets here, this was out of comms, so I didn't know what to expect in terms of what was going to get pulled at what pace. We went into the music area here, and the Demon Hunter did the thing that most groups would be doing if they're trying to go as fast as possible, and pulled every single one of the packs. Now, this would have been fine if I hadn't have pressed all of my defensives earlier and had to panic to try and keep myself alive. Now, in this situation, as opposed to the Ara, I actually did keep my composure. I managed to rotate through what little defensives I had left. I got a lot of assistance from Intertwine, massive Mistweaver moves, big Ring of Peace being dropped to sort of help me out, and we managed to get through what is normally a very difficult pull with very few defensives up. So the ability is sneaking in. I am getting better. However, I think we still need a set of training wheels for the prop Paladin, which is why in this weekly run that I was doing with some guildies, just a plus 10 to help them out, get their vaults filled, this drop happened, which I think is going to be pretty big for us. Yes! I am happy! That's very good. Now, I know that the Ritual Mud is not the best trinket in the world. In fact, I think I watched a video recently of Yoda memeing on it, saying that, like, we basically don't want to get it. But for an absolute spud like me, this is the sort of assistance that I think I really do need. And because of that, I have actually noticed a fairly big difference in how sturdy I feel in keys. So therefore, with that increased sturdiness, let's have a look at some of the successful runs that have occurred since getting this trinket. First up, we have this 16 halls right here. Now, this was actually a very smooth run. I had some whoopsie moments earlier in the week after the nerfs to the dungeon, mainly around not knowing how to gather some of the pulls after the first boss, but we ran through this pretty smoothly. The only real hiccup that we had for the run was this one right here where the gargoyles pulled as we were going up the stairs. However, even with this, probably burning about 2 minutes off the timer just in the time it takes to actually kill them, we still managed to cruise this in with a decent chunk of time to spare. We also have this plus 16 Dawnbreaker. This is a dungeon that originally in the season actually scared me quite a lot. These Shadow Walkers in here absolutely murder the tank. So to be able to get through this with effectively 0 hiccups is like an awesome thing to have done. One thing that we're going to incorporate with this dungeon in particular is there's a new strategy that's arisen where people are pulling a pack in the intermission as the third boss is flying down to its final area. So I think that will also then just help us save even more time because it's effectively doing a pull at a time where you ordinarily wouldn't have been doing a pull in the past. Jumping into the 17s, we have ran into a little bit of a problem though. Apparently, my mental fortitude is not really that good, and I have made repeated mistakes in 17s. As of the time of making this video, I have bricked 4 17s, all have been relatively easy ones, mainly because I have just goofed something up. The closest we had was a plus 17 Ecodome, which was over by 1.5 minutes. We ran the route that I'm going to show on screen here, which is, I think, objectively quite a safe route. We then tried to transition one later in the week, which I don't have footage of, running a different route, which I corked up in the section just here with the 3 Gloomstalkers, because apparently I don't know how to LOS the Tank Buster properly, and I just got absolutely murdered by them. I am starting to see some chinks in the armor, so therefore I think we do need to be doing a little bit more prop pally practice, even with the improvements and the training wheels coming on with the Ritual Mud trinket. There's still a little bit of work to be done. But we also had a little bit of weirdness show up. We have a look here. I, at this point of recording, have gotten all 16s bar Priory. But if we open up my achievement tab here, we can see that I have been credited for having resilient 16s. Not entirely sure what's happened here. I think it may be crediting timed keys from the previous season, as I would have completed a plus 19 Priory on my Rep Pally, getting title last season. Not entirely sure. In post-production as well, I've just opened the weekly vault and I still have a resilient 16 key despite still not having timed Priory at a 16. So bit weird, not going to complain about it though. But altogether, we end this episode with a prop Paladin score of 3,358. Still a little bit behind the title cutoff, but it is what it is. We keep grinding, I suppose.
You don't know me, son! Get it! 18! You don't know me, son!
Let's move on to something that is a little more smooth for me to play, the Ret Paladin. Now, Ret is funny. It has been my long-standing main for so long that I'm extremely comfortable playing it. Even if we look at this clip on screen here, it's gotten to the point with Ret Peli that I'm so automatic with the rotation that I'm able to dedicate so much attention to like watching health bars and being able to bop, dispel, sack, do all of these utility-based things, which I think makes people much better Ret Paladin players and just Paladin players in general. The issue is that Ret is kind of undertuned at the moment.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Now, I know what you're saying. Haven't the Paladin Discord just had this massive meltdown about tuning and gotten a 5% buff? Yes, and that has helped a little bit, but I've noticed in keys that my damage is generally quite a lot lower than some of the more meta specs are currently. So therefore, we need to do a bit of exploring as to what specs we can actually slot in with Ret Paladin to sort of help it shine. On screen here, we've got the end of a plus 16 Dawnbreaker that I did. This is probably the biggest key that I did on Ret this week. The combination of Marksman Hunter and Frosty Key actually worked quite well. Also, can we just take note, Brewmaster Monk is pumping. So like, that's massive. They're doing like 80% of the DPS's damage, which is just insane. The thing is that I think with Ret Peli's damage profile, it's paddy, but not like insanely paddy. So we kind of need to be finding a combination of specs that are providing a little bit more funnel and priority damage to allow me as the Ret to be able to sort of do the thing that I can do best. But we kept experimenting. I've got a run on screen here with an Outlaw Rogue and a Warrior, which actually went really well. The damage profiles worked out kind of nice in this comp. The Demon Hunter pulled a bit smaller. I don't think it was to work around the comp, but it actually ended up working really well. The low target cap situations obviously made the Warrior and the Outlaw Rogue do a lot more damage, but on top of that, it sort of helped us as well. I think having the extra Hammer of Light means that Ret's low target cap damage is actually quite strong, so we moved through this key pretty swiftly. We've also got this comp here for the 16 streets. I think Mage fills that role of like the more funnily style class extremely well. I actually quite liked Demo Warlock in this as well. I know Demo Warlock's not exactly the most popular spec in the world, but they seemed to bring a fairly substantial amount of boss damage, which was really good for this run. The time is a little tight, but we actually had like a big mess up at one point where we full wiped on a boss and were still able to time it. So I think that might just show how free Streets is. All in all, we were pretty comfortably able to tick off quite a few 15s and a couple of 16s this week on Ret Paladin. And therefore, we've managed to end the week with a score of 3,240 for Ret Paladin, which if we compare it to the current title cutoff, we can see that once again, time has beaten us. The cutoff has climbed quicker than we can climb towards it.
Sponge? It's okay. Sponge?
No matter, we will just move on to the Holy Paladin. The Holy Paladin has been the one that's been behind by the largest margin, so therefore we need to kick into some keys. However, the time boss is the thing that killed us the most this week. Here is the most successful run that I had on the Holy Paladin this week. It was a timed plus 15 ARA, went extremely smoothly. Funnily enough, it was actually the first plus 15 ARA that I timed on any of the Paladins, so it was the first time that the Holy Paladin pulled in front of everything else. However, we did run into one problem. I ended up having to put a lot more time into the Ret and the Prop Pally this week, the Holy Pally got neglected a little bit. I actually got to the point where the day before reset, so just before the recording of this video, I didn't even have an entire vault. I had to do a couple of 10s just to get my vault filled. This is where the problem of this challenge is starting to show up. I am fully believing that I am capable of pushing any of these 3 specs to title. However, doing all 3 of them at once is proving to be a big challenge.
Ew. I stepped in shit.
But this is far from me copping out. I set myself a goal and I intend to achieve it. This I envision as being a magnum opus series, the thing that I think most people, even myself, don't think is achievable, and I am going to prove everyone wrong. So let's have a look at the successes for Holy Pally, as limited as they actually were. First up, we had the plus 15 streets. This went kind of awry. We had a full wipe on one of the bosses, but as I said earlier, streets is omega free. So we managed to sneak this one through. I think that the thing that I'm still juggling with Holy Paladin is the management of my healing CDs. Wings is like the most mega easy cooldown to play around. I feel like a Holy Paladin in Wings has got to be the strongest healer in the game, bar none. However, juggling Beacon of Virtue windows is the really tricky part. Dungeons like this, where there's sort of frequent-ish damage coming out, can leave you high and dry if you accidentally send your beacon a tad bit early or a tad bit late. So I think this is really going to come down to practice. We also have this plus 14 Tazavesh Gambit. Now, I was quite successful in this run. These are all just no comms pugs that I found my way into throughout the week. I think this section here is the perfect example of juggling Beacon of Virtue, though. The pops on this healing sphere thingamabob mean that we basically need to be juggling the beacon perfectly. So experience has now taught me that I pop beacon after the first pop, and then I try to pop 2 of the orbs within that window, let it settle for a bit, and then pop again with another beacon. This is just the sort of thing that it feels like I need to be learning the most on Holy Paladin. But there's one more thing that will help. Ellesmere's huge brain. So I sat down and I watched that video that I talked about in episode 1 that I didn't understand, to see what I could get from it.
My name is Ellesmere, and I'm here to talk about Holy Paladin in Season 3, The War Within. This PT...
And the results were surprising. I understood what he was talking about. And in fact, I actually all of a sudden absorbed a lot of the information, and for the last few keys of the week, felt really comfortable on Holy Pally. It turns out we never want to press Holy Light. We want to spend all of our infusion procs on Flash of Light instead of Judgment, which I was doing wrong. And now all of a sudden these things are starting to make a lot more sense. So therefore, going forward, I am going to be putting a substantial amount more time into Holy Paladin. I want this character to not be lagging behind. I want it to catch up. I want this series to look and feel completely achievable throughout the entirety of it, and not just have one character sneak into title and these other ones lagging behind the entire time. Chasing your tail is not what we're after. We need to get in front of the game and not be behind the game. Therefore, while we are a little bit behind on the Holy Paladin, we are ending this episode with a score of 3,108. Now, we are a good 300 odd points away from the current title cutoff. However, I think the learning that has occurred over this last couple of weeks has just compounded on the earlier learning from the previous episode and is going to let us push even further. So let's summarize. I have popped on screen the scores of each of the paladins, as well as the title cutoff at the time of recording. The big thing for us moving forward is going to be time. We are battling time, and we are battling just the pure amount of effort that needs to go into these 3 characters. In saying that, I am extremely motivated. We are going to make this happen. I am going to make myself the paladin guy. Maybe the second paladin guy. I feel like Ellesmere is already the paladin guy. I want to be the second paladin guy. So, we keep grinding. We are going to be working out the kinks on the prop paladin, trying to push into those title range keys. as opposed to just being like one level behind them as we are at the moment. Basically just playing Ret more. We're going to play Ret and find comps that work with it and try and keep it up to par with the prop Paladin. And then Holy, still going to be a work in progress. It is a difficult spec. I've never really played it before. I've never healed at an extremely high level of Mythic Plus either. Very big learning curve, but I'll tell you what, I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I have also heard that subscribing to my YouTube channel will give me more survivability on prop, so go on, show me some love, nerd. I'll give you a virtual smooch.
Ugh. Brother, ugh.
That's all from me today, though. If you want to come watch me live on Twitch as I attempt this challenge, I'll pop the pin, the thing in above my head. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Until next time, gamers, take care. The 0.1% Mythic Plus title is arguably one of the most prestigious endgame PvE titles. For every 1,000 players that complete a Mythic Plus dungeon, I effectively have to be better than 999 of them to obtain this title. Now, what makes this even more absurd is I am attempting to do this on 3 Paladins rather than just 1. Welcome back to Title Trinity, the series where I attempt to push 3 Paladins on different roles to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title. This needs to be done with no carries. Each role must be isolated to a single character, so I can only have a tank, a healer, and a DPS. And I am not allowed to farm resilient keys more than 1 level above what I've already completed on a given character. On screen are the scores that we ended last episode at. As you can see, we are climbing relatively quickly, however, we are still quite a ways behind what was the title cutoff at that time. So we really need to crack on. There is a lot of work to be done. Cutting out here in this 17 Dawnbreaker, you can see we've already got 2 deaths off the rip, which is definitely not an ideal start. Similar to last week, breaking into the 17s on Prop Paladin is proving to be immensely difficult. I'm finding my survivability is a lot better with the tracker right next to my health bar, Avenger Shield and Word of Glory specifically. The thing with Dawnbreaker though is this place is a buggy mess. You can see in the background there, the 2 Shadow Mages are literally just free casting onto our party. I am not entirely sure if this is even like remotely avoidable. We've got 2 deaths off the rip here, and this pull's hard enough to heal at the best of times, let alone with 2 mobs just casting bolts at everyone. We see our Boomy goes down, and then our Shaman goes down. Or like all of a sudden we're at 4 deaths, and it's not even the end of the second pull yet. Unfortunately, with a timer as tight as Dawnbreaker, this is basically just GG off the bat. We lost 2 people in the first section, and then 2 people to what I'm assuming is just a straight up bug. It's sort of all she wrote, and you can see we're just abandoning pretty much straight away. We cut in here to a 17 streets. Now, we were absolutely cruising here until we got some of the absolute worst spawns for these portals imaginable. You can see we have to go through square, back through square again, through circle, and then through triangle to even get to the boss. We almost didn't get there in time to kick it. This boss is somewhat of a nuisance at times. If you get unlucky, I feel like you can just lose like so many people, but like this is a really unfortunate brick. Like we came into this boss with like 5.5 minutes, was basically just should have walked it in effectively, and we've just ended up cooking yet another 17. Dude, those spawns, man, they were so bad. And then another one here that hasn't got as much to do with bad luck or dungeon mechanics or bugs or anything like that. It's just me straight up dying because I just got confused. So I run into this pull just going into the final area of Arakara on a 17. Normally I would be looking to jump with a Divine Toll to pull this extra Overseer over the back here. However, I must have used it on the previous boss, and you can see all of a sudden now I don't have this ability. I just get awfully confused, don't know what to do, get rooted, and then straight up just die. Now, this is very much more on me. The fact that I am so used to pulling that pack in a particular way that I wasn't able to adjust when I didn't have that ability. But this just sort of sums it up, man. Like you end up when you're pushing keys, a lot of it does just end up being brick after brick after brick after brick. The thing with title pushing, though, is it's never easy. It's basically always an immense challenge that requires extreme amounts of time and persistence. And so I dusted myself off, and we're just going to get straight back in there. The more keys we throw ourselves against, the more opportunities we have to time them. So after multiple attempts, we finally knock out the plus 17 streets. This is a perfect example of how persistence pays off. This key was just randomly listed late at night. I decided I'd give it a whirl, and lo and behold, the entire group just clicked well enough that we were able to sneak over the line. Following this, pretty close by, a plus 17 Ecodome as well. Now, Ecodome's a fairly easy key, but it's actually quite tough, like tanking, because there is such a diversity in the routes that it feels like there is a lot of pressure on me as the tank to sort of guide the run properly. But again, we've managed to come in here and overcome the adversity from before and then knock another key out, which is just fantastic. Nice. Not every key is cursed, it would seem. Following this, we managed to get our revenge on Ara. We actually were able to recover after that tank wipe before, in a shock to basically everybody, because normally a tank death is just ripperino. We recover, we stabilize, we get down to the boss, and we're able to knock out 17 Ara as well. And then my most probably personally impressive accomplishment for the week is this plus 17 Floodgate. It's typically, I would say, probably the hardest tanking key in the game. We didn't time this, but this big mama lived for ages. There was so many times where there was extra tank busters going out because the ads just weren't dying. People weren't cleaving them down quick enough. And yet, I survived. I somehow juggled all of my defensives close to perfectly and was able to live through what I think is arguably one of the hardest tank fights in the entire game. And this leaves us with a score on Prot of 3,474. Now, I know that this is still a little ways away from the current title cutoff, but I'm actually quite proud of myself with how Prot has gone. I have never really been a tank in the past. I've gotten the Mythic Plus title twice. Once in Season 1, effectively by accident on an Orgovoker, which is basically just I had to exist in the key and not int too hard and the keys would get timed. And then once last season on Retribution Paladin, which I did actually have to work extremely hard for. However, tanking in and of itself is a whole lot of a different animal compared to DPS. So we're still like working out the kinks, but I'm seeing these successes as big wins for me. Even though we might be just shy of the current title, I'm quite confident that we're able to sort of forge forward with this. So you would think, oh, Holy Paladin, right? It's the lowest scored of the three, so you'd be doing key levels that are 1 to 2 levels lower than the Prot, so it must just be easier, right? Incorrect. I'm not very good at Holy still. However, one big thing that I think is going to make this challenge even remotely viable is persistence. I have never been a very mechanically skilled player, but I've always been extremely good at just putting in hours and hours and hours of work. And that's what we have to do with this character. So we managed to sneak into this plus 15 Priory. Pretty challenging key, even though it is only a plus 15. Not entirely sure about this pull here, but we've come in here to grab the mini boss plus this links pack with the knight still sort of padding around, and in a surprise to nobody, in comes the knight. And this is just unhealable. It's just not, I don't think there'd be many healers out there that would be able to keep a party alive through such an immense amount of damage. Fortunately, resilient key, so we run it back. I had a bit of a glimmer in this key. We can see here on the second boss on our second attempt of this dungeon, the DK goofed his AMS. We had to heal him through 3 stacks of the debuff. Now, I managed to keep my composure Like, literally, I thought he was just dead. There was just no way I thought I could heal through this. I must be gaming, honestly. Now, the hope was that we would be rewarded for this, that this would be the turning point. Incorrect. We got to Brawn Pike in the final room. We had plenty of time left, and I just was not juggling my healing CDs well at all. You can see in this pool, we're only sort of sitting around that like 2.7 million HPS mark. People are just dying. The tank dies. Everyone just dies. And I think this is just entirely on me. And it's a pretty deflating experience if you're getting to the end of a key that you've just spent like half an hour doing and have bricked because of your own, I guess, incompetence. We then roll into a 16 Ecodome. This one should be a pretty easy key. I would sort of argue that 16 Ecodome is probably easier than 15 Priory, like across the board. However, we have a whoopsie on the first boss. Ads get eaten. The damage amp is now in effect. Now, realistically, I probably should still be able to heal through this. However, given that I am already just struggling from a just general lack of skill on Holy Paladin, we can't, and we end up bricking this one as well. And then a glimmer of hope arises. We find our way into a plus 15 floodgate. This is looking a lot smoother. I have found that when I'm able to actually lock in and not be distracted by like Discord or Twitch chat or anything like that, my healing actually is quite good. And this big mama fight goes really smoothly. Nobody dies. We end up juggling our Beacon of Virtue like really, really well. I'm able to keep note of how much holy power I'm generating and when I'm getting my solar infusion procs to be able to heal up the party. And we managed to get through every single AoE pulse. Unfortunately, even though I don't have recording of this, we're still not rewarded for that though. And we do just end up bricking later in the key. Fortunately, not to my own doing this time, but still very, very tragic look on the Holy Paladin so far. But I did learn something from these runs. I need to give my utmost attention to Holy Paladin when I'm playing it. I just am not good enough at it yet to be able to multitask or talk to people or even think about anything else. So I sat down and I thought, I'm just going to put my headset on, minimize all my distractions, and I'm going to jump straight into a key and see how it goes. And wouldn't you know it, it went well. We have a 16 Dawnbreaker. This boss here is extremely hard to heal. It's really bad. I have played with a Holy Paladin on my prot before, and he accidentally used his beacon like 2 seconds too early, and 2 people died because of it. But what would you know? We get through this entire boss fight with no deaths. We then go on to time. It's not a hard 16, but it's a more challenging 16 than most of the other ones out there. We then jump into a plus 16 streets, only for my confidence to be shattered. We get halfway through the dungeon, and this Overseer and all of the littlies around it butt pull with the mini-boss. We end up full wiping. I'm unsure if it was even possible for me to be able to heal through this. It's a very tough pull in general. But we've taken a key that looked like we were going to get our next 16 on the list, and it just hasn't worked out because of some whoopsies in the middle of the dungeon. Except for the fact that it did work out. We forged onwards, we locked in, we sat up straight with our headset on, and we timed it 15 seconds left. The Holy Paladin is on the up and up. Massive stuff on the Holy Pally. And then to cap it all off, we weren't rewarded in this key, but I once again blocked out all distractions and sat up as straight as I possibly could in this plus 16 Halls of Atonement. We unfortunately are not able to time it because of this extremely bizarre, I'm assuming has to be a bug, of this gargoyle pulling onto the mini-boss. I have no idea. I cannot possibly fathom where this guy came from, but we do end up bricking it with like such a small margin of time that I'm positive that that gargoyle made the difference there. I have no idea how that pulled. If anyone knows, please let me keep me posted in the comments. It's just such a bizarre thing. This season seems to be so full of bugs, and it's just so frustrating when they effectively ruin a key and it's something that you cannot even avoid yourself. And this leaves us with an ending score of 32.98 on Holy Paladin. Now, a little bit lower than the prot, but actually, I'm quite impressed with like how much we've been able to drag the scores together. If we remember back to episode 1, I'd never played Holy Paladin. Part of the video was literally me showing footage of me getting level boosted on Siren Isles. So I think the persistence is really showing. It's actually converting into some score increases, even though there was definitely times through the week where I was feeling really down in the dumps because I would sit there basically all day trying to do keys and not completing them effectively. Just a quick interlude. I have recently unlocked channel memberships, which is a really cool thing. I have set up a tiered system for anyone who wants to support the channel. The first tier starts at only $1.50 or it's like one freedom dollar basically. And this gives premium Discord access. Now, for those who want to join my new Discord community, but can't provide support for whatever reason, you can still join the Discord and then just send me a DM and I will provide everybody with roles free of charge, no questions asked. I don't want it to be exclusive to people who pay money. But if you want to support the channel, click the join button below the video. I also have a really cool perk, which I think is a good idea. I'm excited for someone to sign up for it, where I'm going to give people a shout out in the middle of a video once a month by sneaking a character into it Where's Waldo style. So like have the person design the character and the message that they want to have and have it pop up in a video randomly. So if anyone is interested, click the join button below. Otherwise, jump into the Discord. As if to say that practice and experience makes all of the difference when it comes to pushing in Mythic Plus, the Ret Paladin has been the one character that has powered forward this week. We have almost just a straight up compilation of successes. I have this run on screen, a plus 16 Gambit. Not an enormous key, but really easy one to get under the belt. We then have the ending of a plus 16 Ara. Now, this is funny. I timed this before I timed the plus 16 Ara on my prop Paladin. My prop Paladin was the last character to get to a plus 16 Ara, which is really funny because it's the most progressed one out of the lot. We have a times 16 Ecodome. Nothing really fancy to go over here. I've found with Ret lately that the best approach has been to just play a really big sort of AoE cleave build. I know that currently a lot of the popular specs this season have a very single target / like funnily damage profile, and using just the straight up like unga bunga AoE build seems to be succeeding the most. And then we start to roll in. We have a 17 streets that we're going to attempt. Now we're starting to get into the big boy keys now. Unfortunately, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Streets, while being typically a quite easy key in general, does have the downside of plenty of times where people can just die here and there. And what happened this run is we just had one too many of those trickle deaths, and we weren't able to get our plus 17 on the board for the Ret. Would have been really exciting, but we look forward to the next one, I suppose. Which actually happened immediately after, and we went straight back into another streets, didn't have the trickle deaths, and we timed it. We now have a 17 on the board for the Ret as well. Other notable keys for the week, we have a plus 16 Floodgate, we have a plus 15 Priory, and then we have this absolutely rapid plus 16 Halls of Atonement. This is the perfect example of why this Giga AoE build is working, because of the fact that all of the specs in here are doing a lot of single target on their own already. So we can just absolutely plow through with as much AoE damage as possible. And I'll just let the montage play out on screen because we timed this with so much time to spare that it actually is giving me a lot more confidence in Ret. And that's a big thing because I was kind of dooming on it a little bit. And with that, a final score for Rhett of 3,414. Big jump. Now, again, we're behind the prop Paladin and we are behind the title cutoff, but these characters are starting to get close together, and they're starting to get towards the key levels that are actually like quite difficult as well. I think it's definitely worth noting that title pushing as a whole is an extremely time-intensive process. And what I'm hoping that part of this series can highlight is that you don't have to be extremely cracked at the game to be able to get these really big keys done. You just have to be persistent. I would say that 75% of the keys that I do are bricked, and that's probably being generous. When it gets to the end of the season, it's probably somewhere around like the 90 mark. A lot of people are really scared to jump into keys because of the fact that if they brick, they feel like it's a massive failure. It's not. It's part of the learning process. If Mythic Raiders didn't Mythic Raid because of the fact that they'd have to wipe on the same boss 150 times, nobody would kill these Mythic bosses. It's the same thing with keys. So with it all put together, I have on screen the current scores for each of the 3 Paladins, the current title cutoff as of the recording of this video, as well as the change in IO since the recording of the last video. Again, we are a little bit behind in terms of actually getting within the title cutoff, but I've noticed that in a lot of previous seasons, even the 2 that I've gotten title, it's very rare that I myself actually will be in front of the cutoff the entire time, or even most of the time. The thing that is persistence is what's going to win us this challenge, not skill. Like, I'm somewhat good at the game, but realistically, I think I just have a lot of passion for pushing keys, and I just love playing this game in general. We're going to keep working, we're going to keep grinding, and we're going to make this happen. This is going to be... I am going to be the OCE Ellismere. I keep saying Ellismere's name. Ellismere, please collab. But, like, this is something that I'm just enjoying so much that we're going to keep plowing through it. We're going to keep grinding keys on all of these specs, and by the end of the season, I think we'll have this just immense achievement to show for it. I hope this serves as motivation for other people who want to get into it as well, rather than just me straight up bragging about how hard pushing Paladin keys is. On that note, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Title Trinity. Going forward, I'm going to make a note of trying to record some more footage so that we can have like a bit more of a holistic run of what's gone on for each of the characters. Again, if you want to support the channel, check out the channel memberships. I'll also pin the Discord link in the comments below. Otherwise, until next time, gamers, take care. Howdy, gamers. Welcome back to Title Trinity, the challenge series where I'm pushing all Paladin roles to the prestigious Mythic Plus season title, given to those who finish within the top 0.1% of the region's player base. This comes with a twist though. I'm only allowed to get role-specific IO on a single character, which means that I need not just 1 Paladin, but 3 Paladins. On this journey, we've got Boggy, the Draenei Retribution Paladin. We've got Boggy with a funny O, the Blood Elf Protection Paladin. And we've also got Boggy with another funny O, the Dark Iron Holy Paladin. I'm not very creative, okay? I'm a Paladin main. To make this even harder, characters aren't allowed to abuse the resilient key system, and I'm not allowed to get carried by other players. With the title score increasing every day, the Boggies definitely have their work cut out for them. Here's where we left off the last episode. All of the Paladins a fair chunk behind the current title cutoff at the time to varying degrees. But with a lot of motivation, nothing was really going to stop us from forging towards our goals. Right?
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Holy Pally Boggy is starting us out in a plus 16 hauls on probably the hardest pull of the entire dungeon. These little ankle biters will mess people up if they don't die straight away. We're going to send wings really early, just trying to make sure that everyone stays as close to 100% as possible. I think Aura Mastery is going to have to come out pretty soon. This is a pull where we want to send every cooldown ASAP. The momentum rolls into the second boss. We've got 0 deaths with the timer looking extremely good. High Adjudicator Elise goes down with still 0 deaths and a minute 15 faster than a time that was already 3.5 minutes under. And Holy Pally Boggy is smashing through Lord Chamberlain, the final boss, in personal record time, getting a massive 20 IO and putting us at 3350 on the Holy Pal. Now, when you're pugging, finding a cracked group and then running multiple keys is basically the dream. And that's exactly what Holy Pally Boggy is up to at the moment, straight into a plus 16 arrow with the same team. We smash through the heal check on these absolutely vicious blood guards that just murder the entire team. Cruise on past Anubis, the big bug boss. And despite a few deaths throughout the run, we still time the plus 16 arrow very comfortably. Now, the group wants to keep me again. So it's looking like Holy Pally Boggy is just going to motor on up the ranks without anything getting in the way. Time to lock in, I guess. One minute 30, plenty of time. Okay, so maybe not all smooth sailing, but still a couple of really quick timed keys in a row is awesome for the Holy Pally at the moment. But Holy Pally Boggy wouldn't be the only one to see some success. Prop Pally is also sneaking on in and getting some huge gains with 15 IO in a plus 17 Dawnbreaker, bringing us up to 3488. With a bit of tanking confidence under my belt, I head on into a plus 17 Floodgate, which is extremely hard and something that I've bricked plenty of times before, and we're looking solid on Swamp Face. 1 death, decent looking timer. Starting out at the final boss, Gigazap, we have 4.5 minutes left. Not like a free key at this point, but as long as we don't die, we should win easy peasy. And what do you know? In a big part thanks to Castro for absolutely pumping on Warlock this key, we get another plus 15 IO and land us over the 3.5k mark on Propel. All looking pretty positive at the moment, right? Trust me, things are going to change very quickly. Boss, there is no boss, my guy. You gotta kill it. Now, you might be wondering what's even happening here. Well, this is the start of the downfall. What happened in this key is we were cruising along, and for some reason, our Mr. Warlock friend here decided that he would be very passive-aggressive and toxic towards the tank, which resulted in multiple people dying and effectively them arguing for a certain part of certain pulls. And lo and behold, we took a shoe-in key and with a bit of toxicity turned it into a brick. Very enjoyable. I mean, no matter. It was just a 16 anyway, right? How about we just time a 17 instead? That'd just make up for all of it. Finishing up the second boss, we're looking a little bit sketchy, people dying, but it's okay. The timer in here is reasonably gentle. We've got about 6 minutes left on the timer here. I'm trying desperately to keep the Demon Hunter alive. He dies here, and he then dies a little bit further down the track as well. I'm not entirely sure what I could do here, but the timer's still okay. We're doing fine. Tragically, we were not doing fine. Looking back, I think I definitely could have been better at healing the Demon Hunter, and we end up losing a key that was 2 key levels above what we'd already done. Was my key, wasn't cheating. And unfortunately bricked by a handful of seconds. You might be thinking, a few bricked keys, you know, what do you expect? You're sort of getting up into higher levels now. That's what I thought. So I figured, you know, maybe I'll just go polish off the last 15 I need. We were cruising in this priory, and the tank decided that he would pull 4 packs in the room after the first boss. Could not keep up. People just died left, right, and center. GG key. We go again though, it was resilient, and I think everyone was very demoralized at that stage, and we ended up dying in the same room again, so nice little double brick back to back. At roughly the same time that these bricks were happening, I also noticed that the groups I was trying to get into were taking way longer to fill, so not only was like the quality of my keys going down, but also they were taking forever to actually start up. And then all of a sudden I realized...
Not long ago, Retail Mythic Plus existed in Harmony. Then, everything changed when Legion Remix attacked.
From this point onwards, the week just went into a downward spiral. It impacted all 3 Paladins. All Boggies felt the heat of Legion Remix. However, this run was actually not looking too bad. This was looking very promising as my first 18 to tick off. Until I get absolutely murdered by this pack. What is with this pack? It just destroys you from 100 to 0 out of nowhere. Despite the full wipe, we actually do manage to recover, only for my brain to switch off on this last boss. I was the reason for all these deaths. We were actually going to time this coming into it. I think from this point onwards, this is where my mental just started to plummet. Now, with my mental fortitude on the downward spiral and every nerd and his dog seemingly dropping retail like Andy drops Woody from that Toy Story meme.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
Keys became insanely hard. Not only did the group start to take forever to fill, I swear I became cursed all of a sudden. If something could go wrong in a key, it would go wrong. People would DC, like this hunter here. I am not lying when I say that I'm only showing a fraction of the runs from this fortnight. This is one of about 8 different DCs that I basically had keys bricked to. And I know it probably feels like Rhett Boggy has been lost amongst all this chaos, but believe me, she was impacted as well. Missed kicks, just tanks dying, anything that could go wrong seemed to go wrong. And then alongside that, I ended up being like a crack addict looking for IO on the street. It was impossible to fill groups.
Spare IO. Spare IO, ma'am.
Buggy? Buggy, is that you?
Okay, well, if we can't time score keys, surely we can at least time some homework keys, right? Wrong. I legitimately couldn't even time my own homework keys. I almost felt bad doing keys with people because I felt like everything I touched was a deplete. But challenges don't work on themselves, I suppose, so Rhett Boggy is into a 17 Ecodome. Let's see if we can get some revenge, maybe. Holy heck, we actually do get some revenge. Plus 17 IO, 3460 for Rhett Boggy. Let's go. Now this here would be the truest type of revenge. After those 2 cooked Holy Pelly Ecodomes earlier, getting this knocked over would just bring the week back into the positive by a long margin. And it's looking good too. 1 death, decent looking timer. I think we're onto something here. I guess not. And then we capped off this week with a stream that just perfectly summarizes this entire fortnight worth of pushing. Brick after brick after brick after brick. No, that's so annoying, man.
3, 2, 1.
Why game hard? Oh. But after literally 3.5 hours of nothing but bricks, we get something over the line, and damn, it felt good. Persistence. Let's go. And with that, we finish off what has been a brutal 2 weeks of pushing. Now, part of this has been that I've corked up some keys. Part of it has just been like a string of absurdly bad luck. And then a big part of it too is that Legion Remix has dragged so many players away from retail. I really hope that unlocking the crests with the turbo boost is enough to get players back into the game. Otherwise, this challenge is going to be really, really tough. In saying that, I guess we're all here for this exact type of content, right? If you enjoy doing keys, this is basically what you have to put up with. I know I sort of doomed on it a little bit for dramatic effect maybe, but like, bricks are part of the process and we're just going to plow on through it.
You gotta get in the hospital now. And I just said, just shut up and let me enjoy this pain.
On that note, thanks for hanging out. If you want to support the channel, check out channel memberships. They're as low as $1. Just click the join button below, or come watch me stream some of my many bricks and hopefully sometimes on Twitch. Otherwise, until next time, gamers, take care. Welcome back to Title Trinity, the series where I'm taking my 3 paladins, 1 playing Protection, 1 playing Retribution, and 1 playing Holy, to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title in Season 3 of War Within. This is the title that is awarded to players who finish within the top 0.1% of the region's player base. Here are the scores from last episode. We are still quite a ways behind the title cutoff, but all 3 Paladins are coming along nicely. A quick refresher of the rules as well. I am only allowed to get role-specific score on 1 character, so the prop Paladin can only get tank score, and so on and so on. I am not allowed to pay for carries. And lastly, I am not allowed to do resilient keys that are more than 1 level above the goddamn Discord. And I am not allowed to do keys that are more than 1. Anyway, let's crack into the video. We're going to enter full chronological storytelling from now on, so the score is going to be listed for each character at the time of recording at the top of the screen. We're starting out here in a plus 18 Gambit. This run went fairly smoothly. The team comp that we've got had some trouble keeping in the extra ads because we had nothing to really stop things from running away. So we did end up a fair way over count in the end, as we will see. Getting much better with the hooktail boss as well. I really like using this trick on Prop Pally where you can bubble to make the breath go off quicker. Can be really handy in this sort of back corner when the ads have a little bit too much time to wander in, and it can sometimes be hard to get them. And then coming in at the end here, it's looking fairly good. I mean, we're a little bit closer to time than we would like for a Gambit. However, things still went fairly smoothly and we were able to tick off the first plus 18 on the prop Paladin, bumping us up to 3517 IO. Next up, we jumped into a random plus 18 Dawnbreaker. This was just before reset or just after reset. It was just sort of randomly one evening. This first pull's getting a lot more comfortable. I'm feeling a lot better in Dawnbreaker on prop Paladin these days. However, I made a big goof up on this next pull here. These Shadow Walkers will do this stacking debuff, and because I'm not playing Dwarf and I'm playing Blood Elf, I don't have the Dwarf racial to get rid of it. So using Bubble early like I did here ultimately got me killed.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't.
But, you know, Dwarf is ugly, so we're going to keep playing Blood Elf. But we dust ourselves off and we are kicking into a plus 18 hauls, which would be 2 key levels higher than what we've already done. No, this key wasn't resilient, so it was allowed. So we're coming into this first... Don't know what that was. We're coming into this first pull, sort of cruising our way through it. Everything's looking really solid. This was a super tidy run coming into the third boss, pulling these extra ads up here. This can be a little bit dangerous, but we were coordinating our kicks well here, so it's looking like we might get a nice little +2. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but we might get a +2 key level increase here, which would be massive. And then we come into the last boss, just the one death. We've got heaps of time left, and this ended up being a rapid key. We ended up with +31 IO, 2 key levels higher on a non-resilient key, landing us at 3548. So this is awesome. These 2 key level jumps are just...
FBI,
open up! Wait, who are you? What are you doing here? Why are you tying me up? Wait, so you want me to read this? You want me to read this out? Okay. So, really? Okay, fine. So as a few people have pointed out to me, I did a key on my Ret Paladin that was 2 key levels higher than what I'd already done, and it has since, and it was resilient. So as compensation for the series, I will be picking a random commenter from this video with a random spinner wheel, and they will be winning a WoW token. This is my form of apology, and I am definitely doing this of my own free will. Okay, well, with that out of the way, we're on to a +17 on the Ret Paladin. Same group, we just sort of shuffled things around a little bit. These guys are absolute gamers. I love playing with them whenever I get the chance. So we're polishing off this with very much a lot of time to spare. And I didn't capture the end of the run here, but this put the Ret Paladin at a score of 3,522. We're then rolling into a plus 18 streets on the Ret Paladin. This would be a key level higher than anything that I've done on the Prop Paladin as well, and the Holy Paladin, obviously. So it's looking quite smooth. We're in mailroom with a good chunk of time left with only 2 bosses to go. We're coming into the mailroom trash. 13 minutes left on the clock, looking super smooth. And then, I'm going to pause here. What can we all see that's wrong with this clip? For those that answered there are 2 lots of the ads instead of 1, you would be correct. Now, the tank proceeded to go like this. And we all died. This apparently is a known bug. Love bricking keys to Blizzard's game falling apart. We attempted to salvage the key in the end, but like it just wasn't doable. We ended up being quite close given what happened, but it's very annoying to lose a key to something like that. This next key we roll into a plus 18 Ecodome as Prot Paladin. This was a funny key. I was just talking smack in Discord with a friend. No one was really paying attention. Even the rest of the people in the group weren't paying that much attention. And I didn't even get that many clips from it, but we sort of just slogged our way into the last boss. Obviously, the timer in here is quite free, so that made it a lot easier. And just as you're going, we are going to get a cheeky bit of score. Nice.
Nice.
Now, finally, a little bit of Holy Paladin action. The Holy Pally has been neglected a little bit for the last couple of weeks. We're in here on a plus 16 Priory, and if you just have a peek, my mana is very low. Specifically low, given the fact that Holy Pally never really has to worry about mana. Well, I was extremely smart, and I decided that I would try a talent that removed the talent that gives us all the mana. It's effectively, there's a talent that makes Judgment cost no mana. I decided to get rid of that and then try something else. However, I didn't get any water. I don't have the clip from beforehand here, but we wiped on Brawn Pike, or partially wiped on Brawn Pike, because I ran out of mana in the last 5% and then 3 people died, which then results in us bricking this key by half a minute. It's a real shame because Priory has been a massive sticking point on the Holy Pally. Gonna hop over to Ret again. We are in a 17 hauls. This is one of the smoother runs that I did for the entire week. We can see here just rolling through these bosses. We've got 0 deaths. We've got just an immense amount of time left. Damage from the group as a whole was big. We come into the last boss and we time this with a good minute to spare, which is really nice, putting us up to 35-36 IO. Now, you might be able to see in this clip, I accidentally left my stream mode on OBS for the next few when I was recording, and I've got my old school RuneScape client up in the top corner. I've started playing this recently as a way of just having something to AFK in the background, but I'm definitely not allowing it to distract me too much from the keys themselves.
Are you sure about that?
At least I'm trying not to, but like no XP waste. Even with old school RuneScape going in the top there, we managed to sneak in here 8 seconds under to get the Ret Paladin to 35.50. So we're starting to see some fairly good success for this week as well. Hopping back over to Prot Paladin again. Now, this was a really good key. This was in the middle of the day, no comms, just sort of rolled on into it. Everything went extremely smoothly, and we finally knock off our resilient 17s on Prot Paladin, leaving us at 35.81. Priory seems to be by far the hardest dungeon this season. I think this is the dungeon that's the sticking point for all 3 of my characters, and I have a feeling it is going to be the dungeon that is going to hold a lot of people back at the higher end, which is a real shame because it was exactly the same last season. So getting Priory as the hardest dungeon 2 seasons in a row sucks big time. Continuing on into a plus 18 era, this is an extremely smooth run, huge damage from the entire group here. We are like absolutely cruising for time. 10 minutes left going into the final section is effectively 2 pulls and then the boss. And as you can see, we get to the boss. We've got 5 minutes left with the boss at 60%. And then...
Seriously? Yeah.
So, if anyone's wondering what happened there, the boss just despawned. For no apparent reason, in the middle of the fight. Now, funnily enough, we actually kept going because we were going so well before that we actually had enough time to finish this with 4 seconds to spare. Still a little bit upset that we got scammed out of probably 3 or 4 score because of just the speed. But if anyone knows what happened there, let me know in the comments because that's just bizarre. Now, the next few clips all came in a bit of a string. I didn't record much of the runs because, as you can see, I'm wearing my cricket gear down the bottom there. I play cricket on a Saturday. I'm going to put a bit of a clip. That's me on the screen there. Look at me go. Very fit. However, I'm actually very unfit at the moment, so I was buggered when I got home. So I just threw up the recorder at the end of the dungeons just to see how we went. Lo and behold, we actually did really well. Propelli went on a spree. We've got a plus 18 Tazavesh Streets, putting us up to 36-12. Immediately after, we time a plus 19 Gambit. Woo! Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go. Which you can see that I'm very happy with and puts us up to a score of 36-22. And then immediately after, into an 18 Floodgate, we timed that as well, putting us up to a score of 36-37. So despite being extremely tired from running around in the sun all day, I somehow managed to time 3 keys in a row on Prop Paladin and really vault us towards that title cutoff. And we still kept going. I changed my shirt here because I stunk of sweat, but I jumped on a Holy Pelly key later at night. You can see it's the darkness in the background. And the rare Holy Pelly key has put us up to 34-23. Now, there must have been a timed key in the middle between this one and the last one on video, because this is a bit of a jump, but it is good to get at least some Holy Pelly score in. We're going to need a lot more in the next episode if we want even half a chance of completing this series. Following that, Blizzard's game actually decided to work in a plus 18 streets.
Yes, he went to try. Oh, DD. Oh, what it is. Oh, DD. What?
We get through the music area with no bugs. And we finish the key off a little bit tight, but still with 5 deaths on the board. It's nice to actually get this one knocked over as well. Puts us up to 35-64 and gives us the Unbound Damage Dealer achievement. This looks like it was just added to the game recently, so each key that I timed after the addition gave me the achievement, even though I've obviously timed everything at a 10 already. We're then looking very good to time this plus 18 hauls until... everything went to shambles. Now, admittedly, this was pretty unlucky, but also we did do like a 120% count route. Not ideal. I don't think it was on purpose, obviously, but this sort of cascade of errors would have been a nice one to get under the belt as ret, but still, can't win them all. And then our last key for the week is a plus 18 Dawnbreaker on Prop Paladin. This one went extremely smoothly. It was really nice to get knocked out of the way given the issue that we had in the earlier clip for Prop Paladin in Dawnbreaker, and it leaves us with an end score of 36-53. And also gives us the Unbound Tank achievement, which of course we should have already had, but it's just coming in now. So to end off, I've put the scores on screen of where each of the Paladins currently sits, as well as the current title cutoff. As you can see, Prop Paladin's a fair chunk in front again, although all of them are still a little bit behind the title cutoff. Now, to give us a chance of actually succeeding here, I want each of the characters to ideally be, say, within a key level of title cutoff at all times. If we're at least in striking distance on all of them at a bare minimum, then the possibility of actually doing this is still there. I also want to reiterate, I didn't put the 19 Gambit in the video, but I do have the full VOD on my channel. I wasn't aware that it was a resilient 19. So once again, as I said earlier, comment below, and I will do a random comment picker in 2 weeks' time, and that person will win a WoW token. That's all from me. If you want to support the channel, check out the memberships by clicking the join button below or jump into my community Discord. Otherwise, thank you for hanging out. Until next time, gamers, take care. Welcome back to Title Trinity, the series where I'm pushing 3 separate Paladins, each on a different spec, to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title in Season 3 of War Within. Here are the scores as of the end of the last video. As you can see, we're doing fairly well keeping all the Paladins up there in IO, but still a fair chunk behind the current title cutoff as of the recording of the last video. Quick rules refresher. I'm only allowed to get role-specific IO on each character. I am not allowed to pay for carries for obvious reasons, and I am not allowed to do a resilient key more than 1 level above the key that I have currently timed on that character. Those who watched the last video will remember that I broke Rule 3, sort of by accident, sort of by not accident, in the last episode, and so a random comment will be picked from the previous video to receive a WoW token as compensation. Going forward, to keep me accountable for this as well, we now are going to introduce Trent, OCE's rule police, that will keep me well and truly in line. Starting out on Prop Paladin, a cheeky key right on reset during the middle of the day. These don't happen very often in OCE. Into an 18 Priory. Now this is for my Resilient as well, so it's always nice to have a crack at a key in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. Let's see how we get on with it. Now I've had some troubles with this pull in the past. It's extremely sketchy on Prop Paladin, and probably any tank. You just take a lot of damage on the gather. As you can see, we are sort of fighting for our life right on the beginning there, but with Kings, we managed to keep ourselves alive and stabilize. And then after a deathless final section, which on a no-comms pug is basically unheard of, we polish this off with a good minute and a bit to spare and start the fortnight out with Resi 18s ticked off the list. And then on the same day, I thought, man, we better get back in there with Holy Pally as well. This character's been falling behind a little bit, and we tick this off at only a 15, admittedly, but we also knock out the Resilient 15 for the Holy Pally. So Priory always seems to be the key that is the one that's left behind. So good to get that knocked out of the way. And as if this Wednesday couldn't get any better, we get into an 18 Floodgate as Ret Pally, again as a no-comms pug, but this went extremely smoothly. The one really cool thing here is on this first pull, I don't have live updating for details enabled, but I blasted away. It's really nice to see some good numbers on Ret Pal. Heaps of time left in this final section. I did try my best to int a bit here by just standing in a frontal for no reason. Brain fart, I guess. But aside from that little whoopsie, we managed to polish this off pretty smoothly once again, and the start of this episode is looking very promising already. We're still living out here in Pugland, now in a plus 19 hauls. This is an NA group, but the ping didn't seem to be impacting me too much here, and we are absolutely blasting away. Love seeing Shock on Ellie Shaman. For those who don't know, he was our healer in our push to title last season, and he is still blasting away. What a gamer. But as they say, the pugs giveth and the pugs taketh away. We're looking very good in this key here, but the healer just unfortunately dies and everything falls apart. Getting to that point in the season now where the key level is high enough that one misstep from one player and it's all over. But no matter, I am starting to think at this point that we're going to have to look to get a static group put together to really push some of these higher keys, but for the time being, still living out in Pugland, going into a plus 19 streets this time. And those plans sort of been confirmed a little bit for me. No one's fault here necessarily, we just had a few too many deaths, didn't have a battle res here, and with that extra DPS down, it's just going to be GG for this key. So in the goop we go, and another one chalked up as a brick. After a couple of Prop Pally bricks, figured that we better start sprinkling in some more HPL keys. They're a little bit lower level, and also this character definitely needs a lot more work than it has gotten over the last few weeks. Starting out here, timing a plus 17 error, so just slowly ticking the score up on HPL, but unfortunately can't really get a string of timed keys going. I am sort of really noticing that the gear on HPL is sort of falling behind a bit, really looking for that loom trinket. I think I'm going to have to try and weasel my way into a guild alt run or something to try and get the myth track version of it. And as if to once again emphasize the need for a more static and coordinated group, we are on Prop Heli again in a +19 Echo Dome. And we're looking sort of pretty tight to time here, but we just accidentally pulled that burrowing dude, which is no one's fault really. It does happen a lot. My route was very scuffed here. I think 19s look like the point at which you really need to have something a little bit more coordinated than just slamming your head against LFG. And so with this thought firmly solidified in my mind, I put the feelers out. I contacted people I'd played with before. We did a little bit of searching in LFG and we had some success. Now, I've said plenty of times before that Mythic Plus is much more about your friendship network and your ability to push with other players than it is about your individual skill. This is really no exception. So in my searching, we found Fred and Vod, who I played with last season on the push to title. The DK Jack is Fred's friend, who he has dragged along. And Narsham, or Drabsy, we found in LFG. Now, I've come across Drabs in the past, I know who he is, but we managed to convince him to stick around with us for a more permanent sort of setup going forward. And I know that this isn't a key level up or anything, but even just the fact that our first night we sit down, time a 19, and then roll our way into a +20 streets. Now, this is a massive key level jump considering I haven't even timed the 19 yet. In hindsight, I think this route that we did was probably a little bit too safe, but I must admit I was actually quite scared that I was just going to get clapped by every pack in here. But that doesn't actually happen. We come in here and we're looking really good on the second boss. Only one death, the timer's looking fine. I have a bit of a whoopsie and forget to taunt the boss quick enough and Drabsy gets meleeed as it comes down, but I don't think you can call yourself a tank if you haven't done that at least once. And it was on Music Room here that we started to realize that, holy crap, we're actually a good chance of timing this. We might just get a 20 out of the way on our first night together as a group. But alas, it doesn't pan out like that. Unfortunately, Vod left his Immo aura on as we were doing the cage skip going up to the last boss, and it pulled the skip mob. Now, in hindsight, I probably panicked a little bit. I thought we might have been able to port up and just let one person die, but this was sort of the nail in the coffin for the run. Still, I think we were all pretty stoked with how this went, mainly because we got together as a group and then managed to get really close to a 20 right off the bat. So very positive signs for us moving forward. And just to finish off our first session as a group in solid standing, we polish off the 19, get it knocked out of the way, onwards and upwards. And like any true Mythic Plus gamer, straight back into the exact same dungeon again. This time on HPL, this was an omega scuffed run. I played so bad in this, I cannot believe myself, honestly. But despite all of these deaths, we persevere. I thought it might have just been gear on HPL, but it turns out I'm still just really bad at it, so I had to pull my head in big time. And by some absolute miracle, we managed to time this key. This was very embarrassing. I am positive I landed myself on many a blacklist after this, but I think it was maybe just a bit of a wake-up call that if I want any chance of actually completing this challenge, I need to get better at healing, and I just need to get better at HPL specifically. Aside from this, we are still living out in the pug landscape. While having the static group is excellent, I am pushing 3 characters, so it's really only going to account for pushing on 1. The other 2, I'm just going to have to slog it out. Maybe find some other gamers to put the Ret or the HPL in, but here we are knocking over the 18 Dawnbreaker. Ret has actually had an extremely good week. Very, very smooth sailing, lots of keys knocked out of the way. Now, while the fixed group is really good, it also did highlight to me that I need to actually do a bit of research on tank routes. Not so much because of the results, but because Vod, who is also a teacher, told me that I had to do my homework, which is very fair. So we had lots of time just sort of sitting here planning out different routes like this. And we rolled in for another group sesh. Now, Fred was out for raid, so Jeremy very kindly filled in and played with us for the evening. I was a bit scuffed on this key, just a few parts where like my lack of experience at tanking high-level keys really started to show. But we still made it work. We finish off this echo with a good minute and a bit to spare and get another 19 on the board for us, which is really, really cool. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for this plus 19 floodgate. This one ended extremely fast. Now, while I was sort of panicking a little bit here, I will say that as the week progressed, my tanking ability sort of did pick up, but this game very much gives me head noise sometimes. I think once you have a few mistakes that brick a key, it can sometimes spiral completely out of control. But we managed to stabilize the mental for the night and tick off 19 Dawnbreaker. I think this just sort of shows what a static group that's well coordinated can actually achieve. Makes life a hell of a lot easier. So we're 4 19s down and looking to continue onwards. And in the meantime, we continued searching for keys on Ret Pel and Holy Pel. Now, I haven't actually included every single key from this last fortnight because we did a lot of keys. And at the risk of making this video extremely long for no reason, I felt like it was better to just trim out some of them. But all in all, the Ret Pel actually had a really, really solid week. We've got an 18 error, getting timed just here. I played really, really bad here, but, you know, timed is timed still. And this character is sort of, as I expected, just kind of keeping up by nature of me being reasonably proficient at it and having played it for such a long period of time. Now, while the first plus 20 attempt in the streets went quite well, the same can't be said for this gambit here. This was in our group, it wasn't live streamed, but for some reason, my brain just wasn't working this night. The first area was really slow. I just die here for no particular reason. I'm finding that playing tank, you really, really have to be sitting up straight. On DPS, you can kind of afford to be a little bit more relaxed, but deaths like this just can't really happen, especially in like fairly important keys as well. And we get a big plus 19 on the Ret Pel next. Now, despite Trent, the Resi Police, showing up and informing me that this was actually out of the rule set, I decided to make a bit of an exception here in discussions with a few other players. The OC boys seem to have this like weird affinity towards this Balanced Druid here, despite the fact that he seems to have garnered a bit of a reputation for being very toxic. I'll pop up on screens just some of the receipts of this. So the decision was made that he counted as enough of an affix to negate the rule in this key. However, just for the consistency of the series, I'm going to give away another WoW token. So leave your comments below again, and we will do another spinner next episode. The one for the last episode will be done at the end of the video. Now, despite the fact that the boys wanted to carry Cosmic Energy through a key as a bit of a meme, I guess, he's actually performing reasonably well. So the boy locked in and played pretty good, and we're getting to the end of the first boss pretty well on time. And even on the third boss, we are looking pretty good. It turns out that Cosmic Energy might not have been as much of an affix as we thought he was going to be, but we've already bent the rules at this point, so we've got to keep going, I suppose. And we finish up with a 19 hauls under the belt. Now, I know, broken the rules again, so once again, WoW token time. Get your comments down below. I'm not quite as concerned about this one, to be honest. I don't think it necessarily ruins the integrity of the push. At this stage, I'd already timed a 19 and like 6 18s, so with hauls being one of the easier keys, I'm not too concerned. However, a rule's a rule. Get your comments below. Get free gold out of me. Now, I mentioned earlier that my HPEL skills were very much lacking, so in between all of this happening, I was actually doing quite a lot of research and practice on the class, and something sort of clicked all of a sudden. I guess started just pressing my buttons in the right order and actually, you know, healing like a proper healer. So we are in an 18 Ecodome here, a bit of a big jump for the HPEL, but it's looking alright in this pulsing phase, which is normally pretty dangerous and hard to heal. I managed to get through it pretty well. And with all of that practice under the belt, we get a plus 18 Ecodome ticked off, and then almost immediately after get a plus 18 Gambit ticked off. So looking pretty solid. I'm pretty happy with that for HPEL. And then to finish off the week, we have another tragic brick. This plus 20 Ara was going so well. Drabsy is an incredibly good healer. He is so good. We got to the end here and realized that we were short count. Decided sort of on the fly that we were going to get some of these carriers in at the end. And I think those, with the funnel that they provided for Vod and Fred, we're actually looking like it was doable for a second there. It was going to be an epic save, but unfortunately, you can't really control where these carriers dive to, and they do just eventually dome Fred, and that's all she wrote. Now, this might look a little bit disheartening, but I think the thing is that what this week has shown is that these keys are very timeable. Like, very, very timeable. This run was far from where I would want it to be. And our first attempts at a lot of these 20s are pretty much getting timed almost straight away. So I think this is really, really good signs for the series. The Protpel in this push group scenario will be very, very good at climbing its way up there, leaving us really to have to just worry about the Ret and the HPEL. And as I've said, I'm very experienced with Ret as it is. So it's probably just going to end up being a case of how did push group go with Protpel, Ret just tagging along, and then HPEL, I guess, bringing up the rear. We'll see how we go. But yeah, tragic to not get this under the belt, but also like really, really positive signs for us as well. And with that, we are ending the week with the scores on screen and then the current title cutoff also listed beside it. Obviously, none of the characters inside of the cutoff still, but honestly, I think a lot of confidence has come from this week, and I am very, very certain that we will be able to make a very good run at this. It's already fairly impressive, even just for me looking at it, going like, man, that's 3 Paladins at a reasonably high score already, so we're going to keep forging on. But I know everyone has been waiting for the WoW token giveaway, so let's get to the random comment picker already. All right, so here we are on a comment picker website. I hope this doesn't have Trojans on it. I guess we'll see though. 26 comments, so pretty good odds for everyone involved. Make sure you get your comments below for this video for the next WoW token giveaway. I guess at this point you guys probably want me to be breaking the rules just so that you get a good shot at the token. So let's press the button and see who wins it. And the winner is Norbert Beliga 1504. So send me a PM on YouTube, and I will also send you a PM just in case you don't see it. And we will get that WoW token to you ASAP. I will provide receipts in the following video as well. So congrats, dude. And with that, thank you for tuning in for this episode of Title Trinity. If you want to see me live in action, check my Twitch stream out. If you want to support the channel, like Mr. Ghost Splinter and my other YouTube members, click the join button below for some cool perks. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, gamers, take care. Welcome back to Title Trinity, the series where I am pushing not 1, not 2, but 3 separate Paladins, each of a different role, to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title in Season 3 of War Within. On screen are the scores from the last episode. I think over this last couple of weeks, the main thing that has truly set in for us is the gravity of the task that I have set out to do. I am getting very burnt out with it. This hasn't purely been from motivational issues. To be honest, most of it comes from the fact that player engagement at the moment is quite low. LFG is very, very quiet a lot of the time, and as such, I found it very difficult to get into keys specifically on Ret and Holy because I don't have a fixed group to play those 2 classes with. But enough whinging, let's get into the progress over the last couple of weeks. End of the video, we will also announce the winner for the WoW token from the last video. Starting out on the Prot Paladin in Ara this week. Now, this dungeon has been a very much up and down place for us. We have had some big wins and also some big losses. This run in particular starts out extremely smoothly. We are sort of cruising towards the end, and then all of a sudden, tragically, we're losing 2 people right at the end with no battle reses left. A key that was basically in the bag, just disappearing. we sat down and did a little bit of theory crafting. The route in Ara seems to be able to be changed fairly substantially. So after a fair chunk of deliberation, we did resend this key and failed it on the 20. We thought that potentially the warm-up in the 19 was actually enough to get us going, but apparently not. Just sort of too many trickle deaths. It's really hard for Fred to stay alive as mage in this key in particular, but a solid attempt nonetheless. Not as solid as that one that we missed by 15 seconds a couple of weeks back, but still solid. We did, however, run this one back on the 19 and did manage to get it knocked out of the way, so there are some upsides here. Let's now have a look at the most meta-defining comp I have ever seen. We are running Frost Mage, Balanced Druid in this key. Not just one, but two off-meta picks. Now, this was a resilient 20, so Shield was just kind of giving it a whirl. I honestly went into this like comp-wise thinking that we might actually struggle, but we chug on to the second boss, and it's now that I sort of realized that, hey, we're actually like making pretty good time. This comp is like far from optimal, but I think it just goes to show that it doesn't really matter like what you're playing some of the time, but how good you are at playing it. We keep rolling on through. The run is going extremely smoothly. We have one little mishap right here on the third boss. Now, this boss is generally pretty easy to manage for tanks. However, the difficulty comes when pulling this obliterator onto the boss. We obviously need to kick the bolts. However, if a tank bolt goes through, it is pretty much a one-shot. That bolt hit me for like 28 mil or something like that. Fortunately, every single person in the party was a night elf and could meld, so I managed to actually get threat back on everything pretty quickly. It's not often that you have a tank death at a high key that results in literally no other death aside from the tank. We then just go on to polish off the boss, maybe with a little less time than we would have liked, but given the fact that our comp was definitely a little bit offbeat, more than a little bit offbeat, it was very offbeat. So awesome way to get our first 20 ticked off. Now, I have this replay here of the end of a 19 Priory. Now, you would look at this and go, oh, excellent. One of the hardest keys of the season, ticked off, and all we're getting is a replay at the end of the dungeon. Well, this run was preceded by wipe after wipe. Now, the ones that I've shown are just a couple of probably 12 or 13 different instances where this key didn't succeed. So unfortunately, I think the 20 is going to have to be done for title. So I'm not entirely sure how that's going to go, but we're just going to have to work it out when it comes. As a group, we then had a pretty solid attempt at this 20 Dawnbreaker. I'm feeling a lot more confident as Propel in this place now, although I will say this dungeon is just one super long tank check. Now, after we did wipe, we decided to sort of keep going and just sort of test out different pulls to see like how we would go handling them. By the end of the week, after a few other attempts, it's sort of now at the point where I feel like as long as I play just close to perfectly as Propelly, then living the 20 Dawnbreaker with a Resto Shaman is doable. Still, I wish I was a DPS for this key. This key is extremely tank heavy. Like every single pack just feels like it's going to murder you if you look at it the wrong way. As you can probably notice, pretty much every key up until this point has been Propelly, and most of them have involved flops. So splitting things up a little bit with the HPEL here, jumping into a plus 18 hauls. Now, Holy Pell has very much lagged behind lately. Not so much because of the fact that I've hit like a hard ceiling, but mainly because of a mix of all of the characters are starting to get into, say, the top like 0.1 to 1% of the player base at the moment. So the number of keys is drying up, and also engagement in the game at the moment is quite low. The total number of runs being done, particularly in OCE region, which I think Holy Pelly is one of the only ones that I feel like I can't really play on higher ping. There's just not much happening. So it's sort of leading to this situation where like I want to be pushing this, but we're getting sort of stuck not being able to actually find many groups because there's just not that many happening. Nonetheless, we do manage to sneak in the plus 18, giving us a fair chunk of score as well. So I'm sort of hoping for the Holy Pally at the moment that we can just keep it up to scratch with the other two, and then maybe just like give a nice little burst towards the end of the season. The Prot Pell is the main focus by a long margin at the moment. The Holy Pally is just going to have to bring up the rear guard. After this, though, we had what can only be described as one of the most brutal floodgate grinds I have had for a while. This all came from a stream where, admittedly, I probably came home from work a little bit tired. I hadn't really thought too much about how we were going to approach Floodgate. And what that resulted in was death after death after death. We were in here for a solid 3 hours, and I think we maybe made it past Big Mama once. And unfortunately, probably half of those times where the group fell apart was just me dying to this boss. This is a very good indication of what you need to do as a tank in particular, or just as a player in general. I hadn't really researched how to approach this boss. You really need to map out your defensive CDs here. And as you can see, I think this is just an indication of me just getting more and more frustrated and more head noise until... Oh, dude, no, I need to go in bed, man. That's just not... Oh. My mental is broken, boys. Unfortunately, there is a happy ending to this story that I actually don't have the recording of. We did manage to tidy this up. I found some footage of a Prot Pell and Resto Sham combo running this boss, worked out the order that the defensives need to be used in, and then, wouldn't you know it, the boss became easy. We actually did time this not long after this evening, and have now got our 19 resills under the belt. Moving on again, we're going to sneak in another Holy Pally key. This is very much how Holy Pally is going lately. Holy Pally is the seagull of the three, just picking up scraps wherever they come. We get this nice little plus 18 streets knocked out of the way. Just kind of trying to tread water on this class. I think if I can at the very least just sort of keep up with the curve, then a little final push at the end of the season shouldn't be too hard. Next out of left field is a plus 20 Gambit, which comes courtesy of Shock. Shock was our healer last season and is off gaming with his NA boys and kindly donated this plus 20 Gambit to the Ret Pell. Really, really nice to get this one knocked out of the way. Ret Pally has fallen maybe on the wayside a little bit, but it's more or less been that I'll just do the odd key on Ret whenever one sort of pops up. But as I said, LFG and particularly OC LFG is very, very quiet at the moment. So we're just sort of picking up scraps wherever we can get them. And in a surprise to nobody, we're back on Prot Pally. This time in a plus 19, which if you have a look at the time, we are motoring through, truly motoring. We get to the end of this key with 4 minutes and 20 seconds to spare on a 19. That is very rapid. So as you can imagine, our confidence is pretty high here, and we're very clearly fast enough for a 20, maybe even a 21 with a route that goes just as smoothly. So we roll straight into the 20. We actually had one saved up. That was the intention of what we were doing as well. And it's looking pretty good up until the first boss. We have one death come out, but it's nothing that can't be salvaged, and we're still moving pretty quickly. And unfortunately, the spider eats the ads. What we think happened here in hindsight is if we rewind and slow-mo, the ads refixated. Now, apparently sometimes if you stun them, they decide that they're going to refixate and just walk into another person. So really unfortunate way for us to go out this week. But I think we've basically got this dungeon down pat. We've had just maybe a shit run of luck at this point. So I think give it another couple of goes and we should be cruising in here. As promised, we're going to do a random comment picker for the winner of the WoW token from the last video. On screen is the receipt. Now, the winner from the last video received 60 days of game time because apparently you can't gift WoW tokens cross-region. So 60 days game time is a bit more than a WoW token. So if that does happen again here, then 60 days game time will be the alternative to the token. And we are picking a winner. 31 comments. It's pretty good odds, honestly. And the winner is Lighted93. So Lighted, if you join the Discord from the link in the description, send me a message and I'll get you sorted out there. And with that, we come to the end of this episode. The scores as they currently stand are listed on screen, as well as the changes in IO from the previous episode. So you can probably notice we've had a bit of a slow one this time, partially because of the fact that LFG is just dead. Not at the fault of any game or Legion Remix this time, just typical end of season woes, I suppose. But also a little bit of a lapse in motivation. Now, sort of had a bit of time to reflect. I guess I didn't start this challenge because it was going to be easy. In fact, I started it because I knew it was going to be hard. So we've got a renewed spurt of motivation coming in, and I am going to promise that if by next episode each character has not gained 100 IO, I will gift another token to a random commenter from this video. We're just going to keep engagement farming like this. So like, congrats you guys, really good odds at tokens. So like no complaints or anything like that. But we're on the home stretch here, basically. And I think a slow LFG queue should be the least of our worries when it comes to like holding us back. So we're going to forge onwards. We're going to really sit down and actually nut out some of these tanking issues that we've had, but also just put a lot more work into the other characters to make sure that we're giving ourselves the best chance of getting this done. I'm fully confident that we will get one title. I mean, that's sort of just a given, but like, I really want to at least have it be conceivable that we could get it on the other characters. So we got a lot of work to do. Thank you for watching the video till the end. Big thank you to all my channel members on screen, Mr. Ghost Splinter, and everybody else. If you want to support, click the join button below the video. Otherwise, until next time, gamers, take care. Welcome back to Title Trinity, the series where I am pushing 3 separate Paladins on 3 separate specs to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title. The ultimate goal of this series is to become Ellesmere 2.0. However, the reality is probably a lot different. On screen are the scores from the last episode. As you can see, all of the Paladins sort of climbing up nicely, but we were still a fair whack behind the title cutoff on every single one of the characters. So we had a lot of work to do. Starting us out in a plus 19 streets. Now, I got extraordinarily unlucky on this first boss. Prior to this clip, I had also gotten the interrogation once. I managed to be able to bubble this one and then proceeded to get interrogation twice more. This made it 4 in a row. Now, it's probably better for me to get it than the Demon Hunter, but like surely the Hunter gets at least 1. We just lost so much damage on this boss specifically. However, this didn't stop us. This run overall was fairly sloppy. You can see here we've got 5 deaths going into the second to last boss. Ultimately, Street's been a very gentle timer, even at the 19-20 mark. Means that we are able to get this finished off and get a nice little +1 key increase, despite the time not being overly fast. Next up, we are over to the prop Paladin. Now, this was probably one of the bigger keys for the episode. This is a +20 Dawnbreaker, which was also resilient. Now, even though it was resilient, we're showing here the first attempt where I just managed to flop on this lust pull. However, my confidence was actually quite high here because I made it to this lust pull after doing 2 of what are likely the hardest pulls for tanks in this entire season. So we came into the second run pretty confident. This pull being the first one, It is extremely hard on Prop Paladin, and any tank for that matter. The order of abilities that I want to use here is generally going to be Spell Ward once my stacks get to sort of that 15 to 20 mark. Let them stack back up. We want to bubble off the second one, and then ideally get like a Binding Shot or a Vortex for the third. This normally would be enough to then get us through. The difficulty though with this pull is that the next pull is equally as hard. Now, I have attempted this route again quite a few times doing the key with other people. I'm not entirely sure how I managed to live this. This pull is hard, like extraordinarily hard, and it's particularly hard for a Prop Paladin. I'm not sure whether I maybe just got lucky and fizz blocked like everything that I possibly could, but onto this pull again, the order of abilities is going to be very similar for this pull. We want to Spell Ward first, and then Bubble second, although here we did Bubble first, which I think is a slight mistake, but ultimately it obviously didn't make a difference. And we finish this 20 Dawnbreaker off with about 1 minute and 20 to spare. The exciting thing about this is this key is almost certainly just a lock-in title key. There is no way that a 21 Dawnbreaker is going to be required for title. And 1 minute 20 under is like reasonably quick for, I'm sure there's like maybe a minute or so to spare, but not enough to really worry about. So I think we can pretty comfortably say that Dawnbreaker is now locked in. Now I wish that we could continue the trend. However, I was not able to keep myself alive in this 21 hauls. My ability on Prop Paladin is still probably a little behind where I'd want it to be. Honestly, I've got a newfound respect for tanks. It is a very, very hard role. I think I would rather do anything other than tanking going forward. So it's been a good experience, but I don't think I'll be doing it again in the future expansion. We tried a lot more to swap it up to the other Paladins this fortnight. You can see here we are in an Ecodome, which we do unfortunately brick. It was only with 4 deaths, but they were fairly consequential deaths, like DPS dying and not being able to be rezzed for like significant periods of time. So we lost a lot of time with that. We then roll in here on the Holy Paladin in a +19 Gambit. Now I'm becoming a lot more confident with Holy Paladin. I actually genuinely think that it is quite like sleeper good. Not insanely good, but when it's played properly, the throughput that Holy Pally has is actually very, very strong. Unfortunately though, as we can see here, we come into this last room with, 9 minutes to spare. We are cruising here, but as we fast forward through this little part, you can see in the background, the caster becomes active again. None of us notice it, and the Unstable Rift kills everybody. See, I'm in a state of disbelief for a second, but it's very unfortunate because I thought this run overall was going quite well up until this point. And similar struggles popping up in the +20 Gambit. We did try a slightly alternate route here with CCing the 2 casters off to the side and pulling the 2 extra officers into this big pull. It's doable, I think, but it also, you can see people just getting clapped by these officers charging out. And then onto what was pretty much the bane of our existence for this fortnight, 20 Error. I've said in previous videos that I was quite confident with our ability to do this key. We actually nearly timed it on a 20 like 5 or 6 weeks ago. I think I may have jinxed it. So even this run here being a perfect example, we come in, we're looking really good, and then one mistake, this time from me, and we die, and it's all over. This is going to be a recurring theme as well. We do then make our way into a resilient Ecodome, courtesy of Shock the Lad. We brick this first one. We got 6 deaths on the board, and they were like fairly rough deaths as well. But the fortunate thing about resilient keys is we can run it back. Now, when we do run this back, we actually finish this one with maybe only a couple of minutes to spare. There's definitely time to save. I have a feeling that there's a reasonable chance that a 21 is going to be sort of required for title, but there's also a chance that it may not be. So the very least, we need to try and get a faster 20 in here, like bare minimum for sure. Unfortunately, as the trend has been this season on tank, I think my mental fortitude in the keys that are like 1 level up, where we have 1 go, is not quite as good. This 21 Gambit does not go to plan. We have some runaways, extra mobs coming in. It's just, man, tanking is hard. There's just so much to think about. So as a way to break it up this week, I really did make sure to play some of the other characters, especially because the key levels being 1 or 2 levels lower makes them just a tiny bit more relaxed. This key on the Holy Paladin went really, really well. We met basically every healing check. We had one little whoopsies here with these slashes coming up. This seems to happen really, really frequently, so I'm not even surprised. And we managed to finish the key off with only a handful of seconds left, but more so the fact that I was very, very comfortable in my ability to keep everyone alive. Holy Pally in Wings is still, I think, one of the strongest healers. It really struggles outside of its healing cooldowns, but inside healing cooldowns, it is extraordinarily good. Even we see this pull here, this mini boss Damien is normally quite tricky. Now this is a 17, so it's a little bit lower. Still managed to get through this very comfortably, and then this Paladin room is probably the hardest point of the entire season for Holy Pally. Holy struggles a lot with sustained healing over long periods of time, and this pull in particular is really hard because there's sort of no let up. You can keep everyone alive through one set of tolls and then be really, really struggling for the next. But we get through this and we absolutely motor through this plus 17. Necro and Steph and all these boys are just like Giga Chad gamers, but like we still finish this 17 with like 5 minutes to spare, which is like actually rapid. So on a bit of a high, we come in to what I alluded to before, the Ara prison. Now Ara, I think, is like not objectively the hardest key, but it shouldn't be that difficult. At least I didn't think. We were in here for 2 full nights, basically. Shock, being the absolute legend that he is once again giving us control over his resilient key, and we slammed our head against this key over and over. Now, the real tragic thing, we almost had it the first run that we did. We had a few deaths prior to this. I obviously now here get sucked into the boss. And then after that, I don't know whether this just triggered something inside me. I proceeded to die over and over. We then wipe in the second section here because I just get clapped by these assistants. Now they do hurt. Extraction strike does hurt, but like looking at this here, I have Eye of Tear. I had things to keep myself alive. I could have health potted. I could have just used more Word of Glories, and then the mental fully deteriorates. I then start wiping to things like a pole. Oh, there's a pole. Oh my god. Or the cliff. One more stack of poisons, and then all right, going. Oh, dude, nah, I'm fucking. That's it. I'm not playing anymore. So it's at this point that as you hear, decided that no, we are having a pause for the night. Fortunately, the autism is strong, and I will basically always return to do the same thing again. So we come back the next day, and after a couple of attempts, we do knock over this key. This was very, very tough, and it ended up being the last score key for the Paladin this week, aside from like maybe a couple of extra points here and there, but really nice. Just like the Dawnbreaker, I'm pretty sure 20 Ara is going to be the highest we'll have to go. This key we could potentially do a lot faster. However, for the time being, I don't think I really want to touch this at all for a little while. So as a reward for ourselves, we hit up the Ret Pally. Now, this was a bit of a tragic run as well. We were looking okay for time, like it wasn't exactly smooth here, but I think we definitely had time to get in and finish the boss off. However, I think the tank just moved these ads across the bridge a little bit too quickly. Just made it too hard to dodge, I think, and people just died in the end. Fortunately, though, we can roll into a 19 Echo Dome, get that ticked off on the Ret Paladin, and then a 17 Priory. Now, my priorities are so low on all of the characters, like particularly on the Ret and the Holy Pally they were. It hasn't necessarily been just because of failures. I literally just haven't really seen the key at all. So getting this knocked over on a 17 is just nice just to get it like ticked off in a sense. And then making our way over onto the Holy Pally, again, feeling a lot more comfortable healing on this class. I'm certainly not perfect at it, but I am now finally feeling like I'm not just getting overloaded every time the healing gets too intense. I am actually able to sort of stabilize my brain and get enough numbers out. Holy Pally on this mailroom boss is awesome. You can bubble if you have it yourself, and you have bop for someone else. Probably one of the few bosses in this entire season where like having a paladin that isn't a tank paladin is actually like really, really cool. We do finish off. This was a very sloppy run, but like we do manage to get the 19 streets under the belt. Not so much for the Ara, though. This isn't a blanket thing, but there are some dungeons that I'm getting very comfortable healing. Ara isn't one, so the pain continues in here. We do manage to get some revenge on the Ret Paladin, though, fortunately. It's nice to get a win under the belt without having to spend hours in here. And I wish that I could follow this up on the Holy Pally. We were looking really good in this 19 Ara on Holy. I felt like I kind of played really well. I locked in so friggin' hard. And then we just had this accidental pull of the flyers at the end that just brought it all unstuck. It's obviously easy to get frustrated at these sorts of situations, but I think the fact that I now know that I can keep up healing wise in these sorts of situations is actually really, really good for like the confidence. And then we finished off this episode with a few attempts at a resilient priory. This at a 20 and Floodgate at a 20 are going to be extremely difficult. I think just across the board, not just for tanks, just like for every one of the characters. I'm not entirely sure if they're going to be hard required for title, but they're probably like 80% of the chance is that they're going to be. The real difficulty here is looking at the timed runs and even just the damage in this run that we did. Prot-Pally struggles a lot, or the group at the very least struggles a lot without a warrior. A lot of the runs on Raider.io, it seems, involve having Prot-Pally and then either a Fury Warrior or a Shaman or both at the same time. So we might have to do a bit of weird cooking and like ring in some favors to try and get this key done. Floodgate as well, just a very hard key. So I'm assuming that the next 2 to 4 weeks over the Christmas break is basically going to be me hammering my head against on this screen. Key. Now, as promised, we did not gain 100 IO on every character, so somebody wins a WoW token. If the winner from the last video can reach out as well, I will pop your name on screen again, and then we will go to the spinner wheel to see the winner of this episode. I don't know what I was thinking, promising 100 points gain across all characters. The funny thing is that 100 points gain for Prot-Pally would have basically just been I didn't even have to log on for the rest of the season, because I think that would have been basically title cutoff, right? Okay, so we've pasted the YouTube link into the random comment picker to see who is going to be the winner of the WoW token. 97 comments. I didn't actually remember there being that many comments, so thank you for the engagement. Still pretty good odds on a token, but let's do the spin. And the winner is me. Okay, well, that's not going to work. As if it picks the pinned comment. Okay, we're going again. Stronk, you win a WoW token. I will send you a message on Discord. Congratulations. And with that, the final scores at the end of this episode are listed on screen. The really big standout here at the moment is that the Prot Paladin is just sneaking in title range, but for the first time this season is actually past the cutoff. Now, there is still a lot of work to do. It's really hard to tell how high the title cutoff is going to climb this patch. The engagement at the moment is very, very low. There is not many people playing. However, there is still a solid month and a half left of the season. So I'm predicting that we're probably going to need, at a bare minimum, another 40 IO. And I'm thinking that maybe 3,900 plus is the target that we have to shoot for. Obviously, for the Prot-Pally, we're getting pretty close, but it's still a long way away. The other characters we're going to have to put in some elbow grease for. Enough from me. I will now log back on and keep surfing LFG again. Big thank you to my channel members, Ghost Splinter, and everybody else on screen. If you want to support, click the join button below. Otherwise, thank you for watching until the end. Until next time, gamers, take care. Welcome back to episode 10 of Title Trinity, the challenge series where I am trying to push 3 separate paladins, playing all 3 separate specs, to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title. Now, this will form the second last episode of the series. The Mythic Plus season is due to end in about 16 days from the time of recording this. So we have a lot of a last minute sprint to get through. The change up we're going to make for this video is now that the end of season is coming around a little bit quicker, we can now sort of pretty confidently predict what the title cutoff is going to be. Looking at the growth rate now, I think it is pretty safe to say that 3900 IO is probably the absolute highest that it's going to get to. There is a chance that 3890 could be safe. However, 3900 I think is a safe margin to shoot towards. So throughout this video, I'm going to include this little graphic on the screen for each of the classes, which shows the current timed keys that this class has, as well as the difference from the title cutoff. In this graphic, I'm going to highlight the keys in red that require at minimum 1 level increase. Green are the keys that are just lock-in title keys and they're perfectly fine as is. And yellow are keys that are at most likely the correct level, but probably need to be a little bit faster. So with that out of the way, let's get into the progress over the Christmas break. Now, something I haven't recorded and happened off screen was I had a night playing Prot Paladin in Floodgate. It was a Resi 20 Floodgate, and it absolutely destroyed me. I must admit, I got off that session probably feeling the worst that I've ever felt from playing a video game. Like, I just could not stay alive. I would die, get a whole bunch of head noise, die again. It I couldn't even get past, like, I think we got to the 3rd pull, maybe. I just completely spiraled out of control. So I made the decision to take a week or so off of tanking. Now, this was more to protect my mental than anything, because I felt like if I had have kept pushing along with the tank, I pretty much would have had a meltdown at some point. So in saying that, we will start out this episode in a +19 Dawnbreaker on the Ret Peli. Now, as you can see at the moment, the Ret basically has no keys that are even remotely close to title. We are a good 160 points behind, so a fair bit of work needs to be done if we want to aim for that 3900 mark. This key went relatively smoothly, actually. It was a no comms pug. We did have Lai in the key. Lai was the DK that timed the +20 error with us quite a few weeks back, so it was a fairly solid crew. We make it to the last boss with a fairly significant margin of time left. Nothing really to speak of in this key. It went really smoothly. The one death was basically just an unlucky death, and we pretty much just tick off another 19 for the Ret Peli. Now, here's where things get really interesting. The Holy Peli, as you can see, is ages behind. It's 300 IO behind the 3900 mark that I will need by, as of recording this video, 16 days away from now, but as of the time of this key, probably about a month out. However, because of the fact that I hung up the boots for tanking for a little bit of a break, I played a lot more Holy Paladin, and to be perfectly honest, I feel like it is such an underrated spec. We look here, we are in a +19 eco, and admittedly, I felt very, very comfortable keeping up with all of the healing checks in this dungeon. So the second boss here, the pulsing AoE is quite difficult. Even this final boss can be quite tricky. Juggling Beacon is really hard because, like, the intermittent damage between the phases actually hurts quite a lot. So we got another 19 ticked off on the Holy Peli, straight into a 19 Gambit as well. Now, this wasn't the first Gambit that I'd attempted at a 19. This key had been quite unlucky, but we do manage to get a successful one under the belt and get a little bit more IO on the HPEL as well. And then straight after that, you can see I'm on a bit of a HPEL rampage here. We are into a +19 Ara. This key was really, really good. Now, these boys are very, very good gamers. So, like, I won't say I was carried, but I was certainly helped out significantly here. But this is a +2 key as well, as in +2 over my old key. So we get a solid 30 odd IO, and we start to push the Holy Peli into a much more respectable position as we go. Wasn't all smooth sailing. I know I'm only showing timed keys at the moment, but we had a lot of bricks, like a lot of bricks even on these two characters. Showing here a couple of priories. I have done 19 priory, I don't know, probably 20 odd times at this point, and so many of them are either just bricked like really early on or are really tragically ending in this last section. I've had 3 or 4 priories that were looking good up until like the last boss or the last mini boss, and just had things go wrong like this, either pull the ads by accident or have a really bad overlap on the final boss. So we will get it eventually, but it's been a pretty tragic key for this entire season. Back to the positive news though, into a plus 20 Ecodome. So this is a pretty big key. It's nice getting the plus 20s like on the board for the Ret Pelly. So I was very much sitting up straight. I have had a couple of attempts at this in the past, but nothing that was really worth even recording or anything like that. We get into the final boss with like heaps of time left. It was like a fairly smooth run, a couple of deaths, but the damage is really, really high. So we finish with 2 minutes left on the timer. On the graphic, I would tentatively put this as like a green. I think it maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but this is probably a fast enough 20 that this could be maybe a title key for the Ret Pelly. So we might just tick that off just to make ourselves feel better, I suppose. We then roll straight into a plus 19 Floodgate. This is with the same boys that I did the plus 19 Ara with. Basically, the Ret and Holy Pelly are like the seagulls at the moment. They just swoop in and help people with their homework to try and get bonus score. This one was a tight one, but like a timed key is still a timed key. So that basically puts us 1 key away from Resilient 19s with a plus 17 Priory. Another couple of bricks here. This is a Floodgate. This is definitely not the first bricked Floodgate on the Holy Pelly, and it won't be the last. I am feeling much better at keeping up with the healing checks here, but just no luck, really. It's just a very hard key. It's a hard key to heal. It's a hard key to pug. This sort of plus 16, 17 region is really hard to play at this point of the season. There's just not that many people. Yeah, we've smashed our head against Floodgate a lot of times. I've had a few plus 19 attempts where I've been able to keep up with like the big mama healing check. So it's not that the Holy Pelly can't do it. It's just a tough key. And realistically, I think Title may very well actually have quite a few people with plus 19 Floodgates and Priories. So definitely a fairly valiant effort so far for the Holy Pelly. Next up was probably my favorite key of this entire episode. You can see here, the Frost Mage Skeezy is a streamer, and I think he is probably by far my favorite Twitch streamer. He had a Resilient 20 Gambit, and he let me slog it out with him for like 4 hours on reset day. We had so many close calls. We see this one here ending on the final boss. You know, I think we were pretty chalked anyway, but like it would have been a tight call if we had lived. We had quite a few other bricks in between this, but I would have left earlier from the key because I really don't like holding people's resi keys hostage on a really off-meta healer, but I felt like I was keeping up okay, so we hung in there, and then after like 5 or 6 attempts, we managed to knock out a plus 20 on the Holy Pelly, which is really, really cool to see. Lots of bricks in between, but we get it done. I think it's definitely not a title key. In saying that, I might tentatively mark it as yellow just because like I think it's a really cool accomplishment. Big thank you to Skeezy for having me along for this key. I'm going to chuck a link to his Twitch stream down below. Please go check him out. Really cool guy. Does awesome stream content. Frost Mage one trick. Tell him I sent you over. Now, the Priory woes were hurting my soul a little bit. We jump into this plus 18 Priory. This is more or less just to try and bump it up because having a plus 17 was just like doing my head in. You can see here, Forest, the tank, is the same tank that was in the Gambit from before. Forest also streams. I highly recommend going to check him out as well. Really chill guy. Pretty sure he's in title range on every single tank at the moment. I could be wrong there, but if he's not, he's on it. He's within title range on most of them. So this gets us Resi 18 for the Ret Pelly and still needing one more Priory increase for Resi 19, but nice to just get it ticked off, I think. We then come in here to one of the most tragic keys. So at the moment, you can see that the Holy Pelly has a plus 16 Dawnbreaker as the highest. This is a plus 19. These boys here let me hang around for quite a few attempts. This one bricks with 3 seconds left. Really tragic. This would have been like 40 points, which not a title key, but like just a massive IO increase to miss out on. So this was really sad. We go into the reset of the following week with the Holy Pelly having its own plus 20 streets from having timed the Gambit. Now, I figured we'd just let this one rip, and we come into the last boss here looking really, really solid. Like we've got good time left, and then all of a sudden I just poop the bed like really hard. You can see here, I took a different portal to everyone else. Everyone else went the other way. In hindsight, I was just a dum-dum and took the wrong portal. Everyone died. I panicked trying to find where everyone was, and it was all over. We would have timed this comfortably and had another 20 under the belt, but I just got coggy overloaded so hard. It was really tragic. You can see we'll keep it rolling just to show the tragedy of it, but we end up being like about a minute over by the end of the key. Really, really rough. It would have been a nice one to get on the board as well. And we're back on the prop Paladin. Now, this bit of time off in between it's a blessing and a curse, I think. Like, unfortunately, it meant that I sort of fell behind the title cutoff a little bit more than I would have liked. However, at the time, I think that had I have kept trying to push through just tanking most of the time, the other two characters would have fallen behind, but also I think I would have just not been able to cope with the pressure of it. So off screen that I didn't record, I did a Tazavesh Streets that was 3.5 minutes under. So we will change the +20 on the graphic to yellow because I think that is potentially a good enough key for title. However, a 21 Streets I think is very much on the cards, so it's a very tentative yellow. We then are in this halls here. Now, I do have this short clip of me dying on the first boss. It turns out that like I got double hit here for some reason and I couldn't quite work out why. However, after this run, we then went on to timer halls, or time this +20 with 3 minutes 40 left. It was really fast. So that to me is, while I think 21 halls is certainly possible, this is by far fast enough to count as a title key for the prop Peli, and we can mark this one as green. We do have a crack at the 21 Streets. Now, this is where I think in hindsight, I should have really gotten up and had a bit of a leg stretch. I felt a big wave of all of that tank stress come back again. In hindsight, I was tired, it was late at night. Now, I didn't necessarily do anything wrong here, but I did take this to heart going forward, and I did attempt a couple of other IO keys and made sure to sort of get up and take a few breaths before I actually start. Tanking is stressful, man. Like, it's really stressful. I think we get there though. A couple more weeks and much more focus on the prop Peli, probably a few resilient prisons here and there, and I think we'll be totally fine. After this, there was some other prop Peli runs, but no sort of noteworthy runs. Just a lot of times trying to get faster 20s, the odd 21 attempt, but we do end up in a +20 resilient Arakara on the Holy Peli. Now, it falls apart at the start here, and this run didn't succeed. Like, we got to the second boss I don't know, with probably not that much time left, but the cool thing I found here is that I was able to keep up with pretty much all of the healing checks in this key. Now, this is a title key. Like, don't get me wrong, a +20 error is more than a title key. It is basically perfect for it. So the fact that I'm able to heal what is actually a title key, even though we didn't time it, but it wasn't necessarily my fault that we didn't time it. So I think in retrospect, had the Holy Peli been my main for this season, I think it would have been perfectly fine. Like, I've seen Raider IO. There's a few like really, really high IO Holy Pelis. I think it, similar to last season, is actually quite good if it's played properly. That's the big if though. It is quite difficult. Quite excited for Holy Peli in Midnight as well. I think the changes look really good. And then last up, we have a +17 Dawnbreaker. This is a bit of a redemption run from that +19 the night before, just to get a little bit of extra IO under the belt. I think looking at things at the moment, the Holy Paladin is probably going to be the one that lags the furthest behind. But as I said from the start, I'm going to try my hardest to push each of these three characters over the line for title, or as close as I possibly can. Now, I'm going to put all three graphics on screen here for the end of the episode. There were a couple of keys that I didn't manage to capture footage of. I either did them at some random time of day or I forgot to click the button on OBS, but these are the scores that we are currently sitting with now. Obviously, the Prot Paladin is like by far the furthest progressed. At the moment, the target I think is going to be to try to get resilient 20s and then probably a 21 Gambit and maybe a 21 streets. That should be more than enough to get us over that 3,900 mark. I think realistically we could probably get away with, I would say, 2 timed keys and some faster 20s at the very least to get us over 3,900, but it's going to take a little bit of work. I think there's going to be quite a few late nights over the next couple of weeks. The Ret Pelly, while it is still a fair chunk behind the cutoff, it's not that far off. Like, I think there is a half chance that we get this one over the line as well. It'll take a bit of luck, I think, but it is only about 100 points away. That's not much. It's really, really not much. So a bit of good luck, some solid groups over the next couple of weeks, and we may see this one get over the mark for the final episode. The Holy Pelly, on the other hand, maybe not. Look, I'm going to try my best. I really am going to try my best, and I'm excited to present what will be the last episode next episode, because next episode will be the last one. So if you're interested in seeing where we end up with the title cutoff series, drop a sub, click a follow, whatever it is. The next episode will have basically the finale, I suppose. Let me know in the comments, do you think I'll actually get there or not? Do you think I'll get there at all on any character? Is probably a good question. As I mentioned in my last video, I'm also making a website. I've got 2 tools that I've been working on so far. So the first is this Mythic Plus comp builder that will show all of the utility and the buffs and debuffs that each class has based on the selections that you make. And then I'm also working on this quiz here. Now, this will form a part of one of my videos over the next couple of weeks, where you answer 40 questions and it will give you recommendations of whether to tank, heal, DPS, and which class fits your personality, I guess. It's not the only part of the video. It's very much like BuzzFeed style. But basically, long story short, I'm working on a website. It's going to have a lot of cool resources. Keep an eye on the channel. I'll keep sort of updating it as we go. And once it's ready for the public and actually formatted to not be like mega ugly, I'll launch it to everybody. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in. A big thank you to Mr. Ghost Splinter. You may have seen his character pop up throughout the video as a Where's Waldo style. All Keystone Legend supporters will get this inclusion once a month, as well as everyone else on screen. Thank you. The fact that anyone is willing to support in this way is actually really, really cool. Otherwise, if you want to see me suffer through this series, check out my Twitch channel. I stream there as frequently as I am able to. A lot of it is dictated by whether there's actually keys going or not. But aside from that, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, gamers, take care. Welcome back to the final installment of the Title Trinity series, the challenge where I am trying to push 3 separate Paladins, each playing different specs, to the 0.1% Mythic Plus title in Season 3 of War Within. Now, at the time of recording this video, the title cutoff has ended and the M Plus push season has finished. The ending score required to obtain title ended at 3912. So we now have a benchmark to look at as we go through this final 2 weeks of the push. This is going to be a big one. I played an absurd amount of M Plus over the last couple of weeks in an attempt to get this series done. Anyway, let's just get straight into it. I have listed on screen the scores from the previous episode. As you can see at the time, the Prot Paladin was still a fair chunk in front. It was about 50 points shy of the cutoff, the Ret Paladin dragging a little further behind, and the Holy Paladin very, very much lagging. So we'll keep these in mind and I will update the scores as we go through the keys that have happened over the last few weeks. To start us out, we're on the Holy Paladin. Now, if you recall from the last episode, I had an absolutely horrendous run in here where we basically had a guaranteed plus 20 timed and I just decided to int so hard on the last boss. Somehow, Zelt found it in his heart to bring me along again on the Holy Paladin. So let's see if we can actually redeem ourselves here. This run was already looking much, much cleaner all the way up through here. Couple of trickle deaths, but that's sort of to be expected in streets. It's a very forgiving timer. You can definitely afford to have the odd death here and there and not mean that the run is basically bricked. And by some absolute miracle, we don't int on the final boss. I pretty much told them to ping the square to go into because, like, my brain is not big enough to handle healing plus working out which portal to go through. But we now managed to get the second +20 ticked off on the Holy Paladin. Not a title key, although it is one of those, like, fringe case ones, so we're going to mark it yellow on the graph. And up next, we finally get a +19 priory ticked off on the Ret Paladin. I think I've attempted this key at least 15 to 20 times up until this one here. And in particular, we had probably 3 or 4 close runs with this exact same group of boys. So L, Fieldy, Shids, like we just could not get a run together in the past, but we did finally make it happen. So that is now resilient 19s on the Ret as well. And a pretty fast timer. This run was very, very clean. All of those whoopsies that seem to have plagued us in the past did not plague us this time. So we got this one done. We then rolled into a few attempts at a +20 Dawnbreaker. This was a resilient 20. I will spoil it. We didn't time this key. However, it was a no comms run, and we did have quite a few runs that were looking quite solid. 20 Dawnbreaker, outside of Priory and Floodgate, is probably the next hardest key. The timer's very tight. The pulls are really, really hard on the tank and healer in particular. It's a rough key. So we do have a little bit of a montage of deaths, but it's sort of to be expected. The following day, now 2 weeks away from the title cutoff, we roll into a +20 resilient Floodgate. This is with Zelt and Cell are the two noteworthy guys. These players are insanely good, and Cell in particular was a massive, massive help throughout the remaining 2 weeks of the season from here. So our first run, we actually got incredibly close. This comp is like a little bit scuffed. It's not exactly close to like what you would consider meta, but we do get to the last boss, I think pretty tight for time, but like definitely still doable. And unfortunately we fail the skip, which for anyone who's played in the last 12 months is a pretty normal and tragic thing to have happen. For the remainder of the next 3 hours, we did attempt this key quite a number of times more. We didn't have a run that got close to that. However, it was one of those sessions where each of the runs did look extremely promising. Like, we had quite a number of runs that were well on pace. We either would die to Mama or die to some packs early on. It's a very, very unforgiving key. A lot can go wrong in Floodgate, but still very promising. However, the next night, which was the day before reset, basically the final hours before the reset, Cell decided to run the key again, and he brought me along again. Different crew this time. Damastius is in here. Now, Dama is like one of the best OCE pushers by a long margin, and just likes to play the game. So he came along and helped out, and we actually just one-banged it out of nowhere. Tight to time, but this is an enormous key. 20 Floodgate is very, very difficult. So we can quite comfortably pencil that off as a completed key. And it also then meant that my focus started to very much drift towards the Ret Paladin. It is behind the Prot Paladin. However, having 20 Floodgate done is probably more important than any score difference at the moment. On top of that, I also managed to get in to a +21 resilient Gambit with Shorus, Raynons, and Kel. So these three boys are three of the players in one of the highest level push teams in the region, and they were kind enough to bring me along for a couple of attempts. For them, this is just homework, but I guess for me and anyone else who is like a fringe title player, this is very much a title key. Unfortunately, things do not go to plan. We had quite a number of attempts at this key. The run I'm showing on screen was the one that was the closest. Things just seemed to go wrong. I don't think it was necessarily anyone's fault. There would just be like some very unfortunate sort of occurrences that would mean that the key would get bricked. And the nail in the coffin was this run on screen. We are looking so good for time. We're in the final section. Basically just a pack and the boss to go. And the caster in the background breaks out of its trap, casts without anyone noticing, and we all die. This at the time was very, very disheartening. This would have been yet another title key just ticked off on Rhett, and it just kind of went down the gurgler. And unfortunately, Shorus, Raynons, and Kel had to go for their team key sesh, but we gave it a good whirl nonetheless. Next up, we jump into a plus 20 Halls of Atonement on the Rhett Paladin. This was Pep's key. Resilient. Again, there's a fairly core theme towards the end of these seasons. Resilient key farming is like very, very much a thing, especially for players like myself who ended up sort of not in a fixed team towards the end of the season. We're just sort of like scrounging around picking up crumbs. Now, this group had a couple of good runs. We sort of reformed a couple of times, and in the end, we did manage to string a good run together. It was fairly tight to time, but having the plus 20 ticked off still is a big deal. I think this is one that we'll probably tentatively mark yellow. It's quite slow, so the key's probably going to need to be redone with a faster time, but we still get it ticked off. We didn't neglect the other characters fully, however, the Rhett Paladin did become a very, very core focus of this push. It sort of became apparent as these weeks went on that I needed to start consolidating my attention into one character, otherwise there was a very real chance that I wasn't going to get title at all on any character. However, we still do keep playing the other tunes. This plus 20 Eco Dome was a brick, and I do have the recording of the end of a run that did end up being really good. It's another plus 20 Gambit. Now, we already have Gambit done on the Holy Paladin, but this one was very fast. Now, take note of the tank. The tank's name is Jelly. Jelly is probably one of the nicest guys in the OC community by a long margin. He started Prot Paladin at the beginning of the patch and decided about 2 weeks ago that he wanted to push for title, but could not handle the Prot Paladin, which I can empathize with. That class is super hard to play. So, in the end, he ended up playing Prot Warrior, and I, fortunately, got to be a part of that push with him as well. This Gambit was really fast too. At the time of the recording of this, this was the fastest Gambit that I'd done at a plus 20 on any of my characters. So really, really cool, really clean run. Very weird comp, but we got it done, and we got it done very cleanly. And another Holy Paladin one on the list, a plus 19 Dawnbreaker. This run went really well, and as you can see, is a big score increase for the character as well, putting us up an extra 2 key levels and giving us a nice hefty little bit of score. Same can't be said for the Floodgate though. This is a recording of one of the number of attempts at 19 Floodgate that I made. This is a very, very tough key. This one in particular is noteworthy because I did manage to keep up with all of the healing checks here. So the bricks of these 19 Floodgates were definitely not the result of not being able to heal through the checks. They were just the key being extremely difficult, as you would expect. Now, really important here, and I'm going to give a massive shout out at the end, but I got a lot of support from a lot of different players in the OC community. In this group in particular, Stim playing the DK, ISO on the Hunter, Ship on the Warrior, and Kitsuno on the Resto Druid. These guys banded together around me to help me push towards title, because at this point in time, it looked very likely that I might not get it on any character. I know it's not a huge score gap. However, those last few points between title and like 100 points shy of it, that is an absolute chasm. It is such a large gap to bridge. This is a plus 20 error. Now, this run wasn't super duper quick. We had a couple of whoopsie moments at the end, but another plus 20 ticked off the list, and we're going to put it as yellow because I do think this key needed to be faster in the end, but still, it's a plus 20 ticked off the list. And then next up, the absolute giga gamer comp of Prot Paladin Resto. of Prot Paladin Resto Druid, Rhett Paladin Mage Warrior in the Dawnbreaker. This was a Wednesday key. It was during the day down here, and it was basically just a random key that was thrown together for the sake of it. I will say, Suni is by far the best prot Paladin I have ever seen. He is an incredible tank. Somehow makes what is objectively quite a squishy and difficult tank look easy. Funnily enough, this ragtag group that we've gotten together managed to pump out this key. So we finish off plus 20 Dawnbreaker. The Ret Pally all of a sudden leapfrogs the prot Pally and is now sort of the best prospect that I've got for the remainder of the week. For reference, this was 1 week before the cutoff. This was the Wednesday or the first day of the final week. Now, with the cutoff looming around the corner, I made a decision which I, in hindsight, still think was the right move. You can see here, I'm in a plus 20 Priory. If you look at the names, some of these players are absolute giga gamers who would not have popped up anywhere else otherwise. This run was a paid run from me. I paid to have access to this key. I know that it's a bit of a controversial topic, but with 1 week left of the season, I know there are players in the region who would sit down and sort of slog it out in a plus 20 Priory with me, but with the amount of support that I was already getting, it's really even then a lot to ask of people, and having resilient 20s done would just make it so much easier for the rest of the week to try to fish for the 21s that I would need to finish off the series or finish off the Ret Paladin. So I had the gold lying around in the midst of pushing. I am very, very much a gold farmer. I like to run like old dungeons for transmog and things like that. So I had a bit of a war chest. I know it goes against the rules of the series, but I think this is just a good sort of like learning experience for both me as well as others, that if you're not playing in a push group, these keys are extraordinarily difficult to get done. You either need a group of really good friends who are willing to slog it out with you, or you need to chance your arm in LFG. I would hazard a guess that there would probably be like less than 10 random plus 20s that have been timed in LFG this season. I watched Decalon's stream run plus 20 Priory Resilient for an entire week. Maybe had a couple of runs that looked half decent, like they were going to get timed. So it still took us a few hours. At this level, when you're paying for access to keys, a carry isn't the same thing as AFKing at the door like you would expect in the past. You really do have to pull your weight. There's no like ifs or buts about it. So it took us quite a number of attempts, but after a couple of hours, we did manage to knock off the resilient 20s. I know it breaks the rules of the series, but we sort of got to do what we got to do. And I will talk a bit more about it later on in the video. I don't want to have to resort to this in the future, but we did this patch. So moving on from that though, we have the same crew from earlier in the same dungeon as before. This one in particular, we were looking to get a faster timer. Now, with the comp that we're playing here, I had to play some very awkward builds as Ret. I effectively had to run a full single target build, which sounds really, really bizarre, but the bottleneck for the timer in a lot of these keys is actually how long the mini bosses and the bosses live. So while my overall suffers a little bit, the timer is quicker. So we do get a couple of crumbs out of this, and then this key can be marked as green, because I think this is a perfectly safe title key. We do have a crack then at the 21 streets. This would be a very, very lock-in title key. If we were to get it at this point, I would be feeling very comfortable. However, it was not to be. I think with streets, if you can get past the first room cleanly, you're probably home free. That is probably the hardest part of the key. So unfortunate, but with 5 days left of the season, there's still time. Once again, the same crew into a plus 20 halls. The only difference here is that Ice Frog, who is playing the Resto Druid, was also a massive support throughout this whole final week. He and his push group finished up a few weeks prior, and he basically put his hand up to support anyone within the OCE group to help get their title. Massive thanks to him as well. I will give a proper thanks to everyone at the end, but I just wanted to note his hard work as well. This one, once again, few more crumbs. We get 1 score out of this, and I think that this can now be marked as green. It is probably just fast enough to be considered a title key, and we can lock that one in. Plus 20 streets now. This is a funny one. I think 21 streets is arguably a required title key, but it's not 100% needed. So we rolled back into the streets just purely to get a faster timer on the off chance that my end title score didn't include a streets. So this one was very fast. So we got quite a few crumbs out of this. I tentatively am going to mark it as green because it is good enough for a title key, but a lot depends on the other keys that we get in the meantime. Same again here in the Dawnbreaker, looking for crumbs. We are crumb hunting once again. We've got Jelly back on the Prot Warrior, Equi coming along on the Hunter. If you'll notice, ISO and Stim were a huge sort of core part of my support network throughout this final week, but a lot of the other guys from the community chipped in to sort of help with the key push as well. In this one, now Dawnbreaker's a really tricky key to get a faster time with a comp like this. We get a +1 out of it. It's objectively not the fastest timer in the world. However, it's probably now, I would say, just good enough. So this one gets a green. And then following this, we get the pleasure of rolling in to a +21 Gambit. Now, I didn't stream this run. This one was just recorded through OBS, so I only get the final moments of the key. However, it went very smoothly, a couple of deaths, but Gambit is a very forgiving key, all in all. And we polish this off. We get one of the 21s out of the way. The timer's not amazing, but it's okay. We end this dungeon with a score of 3,911. At this point, I was actually feeling quite safe. However, you will see on the graphic that 3912 was the ending cutoff score. I was 1 point short at this point. Now, this key happened with about 36 hours left of the season, so I went to bed that night feeling pretty comfortable, and the reason I felt comfortable is the cutoff at that point in time was 3,900. So we were 11 points clear. And then out of nowhere, the following day while I was at work, I was checking my phone over and over and over. The score kept going up and up and up. It was insane. It was I would check every hour and it was a point higher. The cutoff score went from 3,900 to 3,908 over the course of 10 hours. So my score, which at the time looked pretty good, wasn't I was super duper far in front of it, but it turned from, I'm probably good for title on the Ret. I can play Prot and Holy for the next couple of days, or for the next day and a half, I suppose. Went from, I need more score. Where am I going to get it? So I come home from work. This is now the day before cutoff. We have a couple of +21 streets to have a crack at. The first one, no bueno. Again, first room woes, very difficult. Between the fact that the interrogation can pick the wrong person, or that the weapons proc from the boss can one-shot someone if they don't have a defensive rolling, it does not go well. And our second one also doesn't go well. So this would have made my life well easier if we did manage to just tick this off now, and I could kick back, focus on, the other characters for a bit. Maybe help out if a Ret Paladin can even help anyone out, but but anyway, the stress starts to rise. The stress starts to rise a lot at this point. I then play from basically the time that I got home consistently throughout that entire evening. I was trying to get into any key that I could even remotely get close to. This run, very strange comp, but once again, watch Suni here tank. This guy, this is a pull that I would watch a Prot Warrior do and think, this looks very, very dangerous. And he just makes it look easy. I don't know what this guy does. He is actually insane at Prot Paladin. But unfortunately, the run didn't result in crumbs. We then, though, take that key and go into a +21 streets for the 4th time. This comp is very, very scuffed. However, I think if there's ever a comp where you're going to run double Fury Warrior, Streets is probably it. I thought that this would just be an amazing way to finish off the series. I was very, very hyped on stream. I was really, really focusing quite hard. It was not to be. We were too slow killing the boss, and we got this horrendous overlap here where we got yoinked in on top of the circle and just die. So very, very sad. And I then spend the next 4 hours sitting in queue, just waiting for people to potentially sign up to my key. We were in dire straits here. I, at this point in time, was very well considering taking the day off work the next day. I was pretty much going to stay up until the wee hours of the morning attempting to get over the line, because while at the time we didn't know what the final cutoff score was going to be, it was very, very clear that 3,911 was not safe, like nowhere near safe. Now, this didn't result in anything on that evening. I stayed up, I waited in LFG. The score was rocketing, but there was no one out there doing keys. So I think most people were indisposed and basically just doing either keys with their friends or paid carries were going on as well. And at nearly 1 a.m. in the morning, tired, very much just hunting for any scraps that I can possibly get, the OC community comes through once again. Muzz, Dammer, and Cell, who have all been around and supported throughout this whole process at one point or another, come through with a last minute +21 streets. The 5th time we have attempted it. And we then finish this one. No deaths, all cruisy. Ret heli damage is absolutely terrible, but in fairness to myself, Muzz and Dammer are probably two of the best players of their respective classes in the world, so the competition is quite high. And we finish off with a score of 3,923 and are officially safe for title on the Ret Paladin, with less than 12 hours to go. And that basically concluded the push. I would have loved to have gotten one character safe and then really, really tried to push the other two as close to the cutoff as possible. I did have that following day after work at the very least where I could have played, but I was running on about 3 hours sleep from the night before. I was knackered. There was really not a huge need for like a Paladin to be coming along anyway. I did get asked, but like I uninstalled my weak auras. I basically hung up the cap, so to speak. I don't even know how good I would have gone on Ret Paladin with 3 hours sleep and no weak auras anyway, but the final tally is on screen. The Title Trinity series was, I guess, objectively not a success in the sense that we didn't meet our goals, and we even had to cut corners to get one title over the line. However, I enjoyed this a hell of a lot. I think back to the original video 6 months ago. Wow, 6 months ago. And I'd never even touched Holy Paladin. I remember making like part of the video of me basically like chalking a 12 on Holy because I didn't know how to heal. So it has been a really, really fun journey, but it has taught me a lot of valuable lessons as well. Before we go into that though, I want to say an enormous thank you to all of the OC community who helped me with this final couple of weeks push. Without them, I would not have even gotten within striking distance of title. We've got Stim, ISO, Ship, Kitsuno, Ice Frog, Muzz, Dammer, Cell, Suni. The list of names just goes on. Shields, Jelly, Pep. I really, really would feel bad if I missed anyone. And then obviously also like the boys that I played with originally. Yeah, our push team sort of fell apart because like I was a moron and decided to go with off-meta picks. But I wasn't the only one, you know, like Fred did the same thing, but like Fred, Vod, Adam, Shock for coming along, even though like he was pushing keys with his NA team, for still coming along to support us as well. Drabsy, so many other people that like really, really deserve a mention as well. Lan, who I never even spoke to on Discord, but ran so many keys with me throughout the patch. Para, Necro, like Gel. I think like apologies, Gel, because Gel should be well higher up the list. This isn't a list or an ordered list of all of the people I should thank, but there's just so many people that I could pluck out. I just want to say that if I've learnt anything, it is that building connections with people in-game is the most important thing and the most rewarding thing as well. I didn't like that I had to rely on others to help me get over the line for title, but the fact that those people were there fills me with an immense amount of gratitude and warmth and all of that stuff. Without them, it would not have been possible. I apologize if I've missed any names. If you put yourself in the comments and say, "Oi, where's my name?" and it was one of you guys, then like I'll pin the comment. I'll have a pinned comment with thanks that I might have missed, but all of the OC boys are incredible and I could not have got over the line without them. But what have I learnt from this whole experience? Well, I have been a fringe title player for the entirety of War Within. All of the titles that I've gotten have been either very, very close to the mark, as in like I've only just snuck over the line, or have been like this patch where I've required some support from players who have already done all the hard yards elsewhere and are then just like lifting me up by my bootstraps. Going into Midnight, I have a new goal. The OC boys all did this, but Stim and ISO in particular were just the goats. And it wasn't just me. They helped everyone. And this is a regular occurrence for them as well. They do this every season, more or less. I want to do that next season. We are going to have another push series in Midnight, but it is going to be different. The push series next patch is going to be trying to push past title. We are going to have a fixed, coordinated group playing a respectable comp with the objective not of just getting title, but pushing past title and then helping every single person that I can to then get it themselves. That's what I've learned. I've learned that your comp matters a lot. Not that the meta matters a lot. I rip on the meta and I still will, but your comp matters a lot. Playing in a fixed group matters a lot. And having friends matters a lot. Next patch, we are going to document the journey of pushing to title, beyond title, and then helping as many people that I can possibly get my hands on to get over the line for title in the same way that everyone has supported me to do the same this patch. I have done plenty of receiving this expansion, and I'm very grateful for it. I think it is time for me to pull up my bootstraps, improve even more at the game, and then give back to the community that gave so much to me. And with that out of the way, that is the conclusion of the Title Trinity series. Thank you for everyone who tuned in for the entire patch. I had a lot of fun making this series. It has been very, very enjoyable, and I've learnt a lot about myself as a player and a lot of lessons to use going forward. If you want to see the series for next patch, next expansion when it comes out, drop a like and a sub. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, gamers, take care.